The cold in the air after I provoked him was instant. Ming Zhang's smile died on his face. He didn't waste any more words. He crossed his two black sides and swung them at me in an X-shaped slash, aiming for my face. I felt it coming, so I shifted my body half a meter to the right. The dark blade energy grazed my shoulder and cut deep into a stone pillar behind me. While I dodged, I raised my gun and fired. Ming Zhang bent backward in a strange way, almost flat to the ground, and the bullet only tore off his hood. I saw his face for the first time, pale, covered in dark red marks. He was angry now. He growled one word: kill. All four of his top killers moved at once. Nightingale dropped down from a pillar above, aiming her twin blades at my skull. Withering came from my left, spreading poison fog everywhere. Dead End came from my right, throwing 3 knives to block every escape route. Pathless sank into the shadows, ready to strike from hiding. This was their famous formation, the 5 Mourners Array. I didn't retreat. I pushed forward instead. When Nightingale's blade and Dead End's knife hit me, my kinetic barrier lit up and threw them both back. Using that small opening, I jumped back 3 meters to dodge the poison fog. My enhanced senses locked onto a shadow under my feet. I didn't hesitate. I fired straight down into the stone floor. A scream came from underground. Pathless was forced out of hiding, blood pouring from a hole in his shoulder. The formation was broken. Ming Zhang's face turned dark. He shouted for the others to spread out and wear me down instead. They scattered into blurs around me, taking turns striking from my blind spots. While I fought them off, I noticed Lu Jinxiong sneaking toward the glowing stone tablet at the back of the temple with 2 guards. Greed had taken over him completely. I noticed it, but I had no time to deal with him. Nightingale kept pressing me with her blades. I blocked with my gun's body and barrel. Then I saw Withering raising her hands again to cast more poison. I gave up blocking Nightingale and let her blade hit my shoulder instead, since she pulled back, afraid of my barrier. In that gap, I spun around and shot blindly over my own shoulder. The bullet went straight through the back of Withering's neck. She dropped dead instantly. A bit of soul energy flew into my gun, Soul Eater. Progress, 11/100. Ming Zhang cursed and finally joined the fight himself, moving like black lightning. His sides came at me from both sides too fast for me to track clearly. I leaned back and kicked his wrist, but he twisted and slashed down anyway. I blocked with my gun's body. The impact sent me stumbling back into a pillar. His strength at level 40 was far above mine in close combat. He didn't let me recover. At the same time, Dead End threw 3 poison knives at me from 3 angles, cutting off every escape. Pathless also leaned out from the shadows, ready to finish me off the moment I dodged. But I had already planned for this. Right as the knives reached me, I dropped and slid across the floor. The knives flew over my head and went straight toward Ming Zhang instead. 2 missed, but the third one cut deep into his side, poisoned by his own ally's blade. He roared in pain and froze for a second. That was enough. I finished my slide, knelt, and shot Pathless, who had just peeked out of the shadows. The bullet curved around a fallen pillar and went straight into his eye. He died instantly. Progress, 12/100. I spun around again and fired twice at Dead End, who was still recovering from throwing his knives. The first shot missed by an inch. The second shattered his knee. He screamed and fell. I walked up to him, pressed my gun to his forehead, and said, "Next life, throw straighter." Then I pulled the trigger. Progress, 13/100. In under 2 minutes, 3 of the 5 top killers from the Night Owl group were dead. Only Ming Zhang and Nightingale were left. Nightingale's hands were shaking as she stared at the bodies, slowly backing away. Ming Zhang stood there, clutching his bleeding side. The poison was turning his face blue, but his eyes burned with a crazy excitement. "Good. Very good," he said, his voice hoarse. He drove both sides into the stone floor, and his cloak began to swell, like something inside him was about to explode. A massive, unnatural wave of energy burst out of his body, far beyond what a level 40 awakened person should have. Dark red runes lit up across his skin, crawling like living things. "Kid, you forced me to go this far," he said, his face twisted in pain, veins bulging from his forehead to his jaw. This move cost the lives of 17 high-level awakened people to create. "Today, I'll tear you apart." Wind roared through the hall, snapping at my coat. I narrowed my eyes and gripped Soul Eater tighter. Right as the fight was about to explode again, a scream tore through the temple from the direction of the glowing stone tablet. What is this thing? Help! Someone help me! It was Lu Zhenxiong's voice. Ming Zong and I both turned toward the back of the temple. The tablet's gentle silver light had turned into a blinding, blood-red glow. Everyone's eyes snapped to the back of the temple. Lu Zhenxiong was hanging in the air, pinned by a thick beam of silver-white light shooting from the stone tablet straight through his hand. He screamed and kicked wildly, stuck in place. His two guards were already dead nearby, chests crushed, blood pouring from their faces. The tablet had an ancient seal on it. Anyone who touched it without permission paid with their life. Ming Zong stared at the tablet, his eyes shrinking with fear. He muttered the word, seal, then turned to look at my gun. I had stood next to that same tablet earlier without getting hurt. Now he was sure. My gun, Soul Eater, was the real treasure from inside the tablet. Greed swallowed whatever was left of his mind. The dark red marks on his body flared with blood-colored light, and his eyes turned into burning red flames. The temple grew freezing cold. Dark red mist poured out from the cracks in the floor. He used his forbidden technique, Echo of the Dead. All the bodies on the ground began to twitch. Bones cracked. One by one, the corpses stood up, headless ones too. More than a dozen undead puppets turned and locked their eyes on me. Kill him, Ming Zong ordered. The puppets charged at me, mindless but still moving with their old skills. I fired again and again, blowing holes through the chests of the first three. They went down and got back up 2 seconds later like nothing happened. I shot one in the head, and its skull exploded, but even that one stood up again moments later. As long as Ming Zhang's energy kept flowing into them, these things wouldn't truly die. Only complete destruction would stop them. This technique was brutal. While I was busy with the puppets, Ming Zong made his move. With his power boosted by the forbidden technique, he was even faster and stronger now. His scythes cut through the air toward my throat. I blocked with my gun's body. The impact cracked the stone floor under my feet. My barrier stopped the physical hit, but the dark red corrosive energy slipped past it and burned straight into my right arm. My arm spasmed, and my grip shook for a second. Then I felt wind coming from behind. Nightingale had circled around me and stabbed at my side. With Ming Zong in front and her behind, I had nowhere to run. So instead of retreating, I twisted my body, took the pressure from Ming Zhang's blade head on, grabbed Nightingale's wrist with my left hand, and shoved my gun into her stomach point blank. I fired. The bullet tore a huge hole through her stomach. She didn't even get to scream before she flew back and slammed into a pillar. A clean thread of soul energy floated into my gun. Progress, 14/100. Ming Zong didn't look sad at all watching her die. He just laughed in a hoarse, crazy voice. You're strong, but you don't understand how terrifying Echo of the Dead really is. He raised his hand. Nightingale's broken body twitched back to life, her eye sockets glowing red. Even as a puppet, she kept her speed and skill from when she was alive. She rushed at me again in a blur. I kept backing away, watching Ming Zong carefully instead of fighting the puppets directly. Every time he controlled a corpse, the veins on his forehead bulged more, and his face turned grayer. Controlling over a dozen puppets was draining him hard. His movements were getting stiffer, and the poison in his side wound, which he'd been holding back, was starting to spread again now that his focus was split. I found his weakness. I stopped wasting time on the puppets and used my fighting skills to weave through the stone pillars at full speed. The puppets got tangled up in the terrain and lost their formation. I locked my gun on Ming Zong himself. I fired 3 shots, curving them through the air around the pillars to hit him from multiple angles at once. He panicked and had to pull his focus back from the puppets just to block with his scythes. The bullets got knocked away, but the moment he stopped controlling them, the puppets slowed down and went stiff. I used that opening. I burst out from behind a pillar and charged straight at him, ignoring the sharp pain shooting through my corroded arm. I pulled out my dagger, Netherspine Thorn, with my left hand, and we clashed close up. His scythe cut my other arm open too, and more corrosive energy seeped in, burning my skin again. But right as he swung, I jammed my gun barrel against the blade of his scythe and fired. The shot unleashed my gun's full 1500 attack power. Both his scythes shattered into pieces with a final shriek. His left hand tore open from the recoil, blood spraying out. His eyes went wide, and his crazy laughter froze on his face. He hadn't expected me to destroy his weapons with one shot. Proof that my gun really was something special. I raised my gun and aimed straight between his eyes, ready to finish him. Right at that moment, a massive boom shook the entire temple. The tablet's light turned from silver white to a blinding blood red. A wave of pure destructive energy burst out from it in every direction. Lu Zhenxiong, still pinned in the air, screamed in agony as his body began to fall apart piece by piece inside the red light. The ground shook. Giant cracks split open the stone pillars, and chunks of rock crashed down from the ceiling far above. Then a cold, mechanical, ancient voice echoed through every corner of the temple. Unauthorized intruder detected. Initiating purification protocol. The floor began collapsing in huge sections, and blinding red light surged up from below, like it was about to swallow everything whole. The old mechanical voice kept echoing through the temple. Thousands of glowing symbols lit up on the walls, weaving together into a giant magic formation that covered the whole hall. At the center, all the loose energy in the air got pulled inward and crushed into a pure white ball more than 3 meters wide. It spun slowly, and the air around it grew so heavy it felt thick. Loose rocks floated up and turned to ash the moment they touched the white light. Ming Zhang's face went pale. His forbidden technique was useless against this kind of pure ancient power. Under the silver-white light, his puppets froze up, and the dark red marks on them burned away. Without his energy holding them up, all the corpses dropped back down, dead again. Then the voice announced, the purification of this ancient ruin had started. Only someone marked as the rightful heir would be spared. Everyone else would be erased completely, body and soul, in 120 seconds. That was it for Ming Zhang. He gave up fighting me right there. He turned and ran for the temple doors as fast as his remaining strength allowed, gambling that the bone storm outside might weaken once the ruin's energy got drained. His forbidden technique was already backfiring on him. He'd lost a good chunk of his speed. I wasn't going to let him walk away. I raised my gun and fired at his back. He twisted at the last second using pure instinct and dodged the direct hit, but my bullet curved through the air and tore open the side of his thigh anyway. He stumbled, nearly fell, but didn't even cry out. He just gritted his teeth and dragged his bleeding leg out through the doors, vanishing into the storm outside. I didn't chase him. The whole ruin was about to be wiped clean. Even if he survived the purification, the bone storm outside would tear him apart. I walked toward the back of the temple instead. Lu Zhenxiong was still hanging in the air in front of the glowing tablet, red punishing light burning through his armor, melting it, charring his exposed skin black. The seal kept him conscious through all of it, forcing him to feel every second. I stopped in front of him. He was covered in blood, eyes bulging from pain and fear, staring at me. The same trash he used to look down on, now standing there with a gun pointed at his head. Lin Yue, you can't kill me, he screamed. I know the truth about your parents disappearing. Kill me, and you'll never find out where they are. My eyes went cold. I just said, talk. He thought it worked. With a sly, desperate look, he said, your parents aren't dead. If you save me, I'll tell you right now. Before he could finish, his whole body locked up. His eyes filled with thick, black-red blood. He made a horrible choking sound and clawed at his own throat, gasping for help. Black blood poured from his nose and eyes. Dark veins bulged and spread under his skin as he convulsed violently in midair. The countdown hit 60 seconds. I just watched. I didn't step in. I understood what was happening. That red light wasn't some defense from the tablet. It was a kill switch planted in him by someone else. Anyone with that kind of seal would have their brain and heart destroyed the instant they tried to reveal a core secret or face death. Whoever planted that inside a peak level 40 fighter was far stronger than Lu Zhenxiong and far more dangerous. The Lu family was just a puppet on someone else's string. I looked at his half-burned wrist. His high-grade storage bracelet was scorched but still working inside. I reached through the red light. It seemed to only hurt him, not me, grabbed the bracelet, and tore it off. Above us, the white energy ball spun faster than should have been possible, cracking the air around it. Less than 15 seconds left. I turned and walked toward the exit. The countdown hit 0. The whole formation exploded in blinding white light. A massive pillar of pure destruction poured down and swallowed the entire inside of the temple. Lu Zhenxiong didn't even get to scream. His flesh peeled away, his bones shattered, his armor disintegrated, and he turned to ash along with all the other bodies on the floor. I stepped out through the temple doors in the last second before the light reached me. But it wasn't over. As the temple collapsed, the energy veins running through the whole ruin lit up, and the entire place entered full purification. Outside the ruin, Zhao Wuji, Han Baichuan, and Ming Changhe stood near a broken altar. They'd heard the warning too. All three family heads looked like dead men already, without a scroll to get them through the bone storm, staying meant getting erased, and leaving meant getting torn apart. Either way, they were finished. What did that idiot Lu Zhenxiong do? Zhao Wuji screamed in despair. The old rule had proven true again. Nobody who entered an ancient ruin ever came out alive. White light burst up from the ground and shot into the sky. It swept over the three family heads and their remaining guards before they could even scream, turning them to vapor instantly. The whole ruin was wiped flat in that light. With the ruin's massive energy gone, the bone storm outside finally started to die down. Before long, it stopped completely, and the wasteland fell silent. I was the only one left standing on the empty ground, holding the inheritance I'd won. I looked around. The ruin that had been there moments ago was completely gone, like it had never existed at all. I found a flat rock in the wasteland and sat down to check Lu Zhenxiong's storage bracelet. I poured my energy into it, and the storage space opened up. The first thing I pulled out was a metal box about half my height. The moment I opened it, a wave of energy hit me. It was full of energy cores, over 50 of them, all glowing in different colors. I'd never seen so many in one place. I'd been worried about finding cores to make special bullets, and this old man basically delivered them straight to me. The weakest ones were B grade, and over a dozen were A grade. Just this box alone had to be worth tens of millions. No wonder he'd been hoarding money on the side. This solved my ammo problem completely. I could make over 50 special bullets with this. I also found a few credit cards loaded with more than 23 million combined. That old man really had millions stashed away. Then I found a sealed black envelope with no name on it. The moment I touched it, I felt a faint, unsettling energy crawling up my fingers, the same kind of energy I'd felt from the seal inside Lu Zhenxiong's body. I checked it carefully, but there was no trap on the envelope itself. I tore it open and found a small folded note inside. The handwriting was messy, like someone didn't want to be recognized. It said, "The door has opened. The seed has been planted. The dragon spine plan is ready. No signature, no date." On the back of the note was a tiny stamp, a blood-red eye with a slit pupil, like a snake's eye, or something ancient and monstrous. I'd never seen this symbol before. It wasn't from any of the four great families, the military, or the Awakened Association. Some hidden force I knew nothing about. I turned the words over in my head. Door, seed, dragon spine plan. None of it made sense yet. I thought about what Lu Zhenxiong said right before he died, that my parents weren't actually dead. I wasn't going to trust the words of a dying man who'd say anything to save himself. But I also wasn't going to ignore a possible lead either. The seal in his body, this mysterious letter, that red-eye symbol, none of it added up to something small. The Lu family was never really in control of anything. They were just a piece being moved by someone else. Whoever was really behind this had to be far more powerful and far better hidden than anyone I'd dealt with so far. I folded the note carefully and put it away, then crushed the burnt bracelet in my hand until it snapped into pieces. As I stood up, I felt a faint itch on my forearm. A light purple mark from some poison Ming Zhang's blade had grazed me with earlier. I didn't think much of it. It didn't seem deadly. I figured I'd grab an antidote once I got back to Qingjiang City. Meanwhile, a few kilometers away, in a cracked rock formation hidden in the wasteland, Ming Zhang was curled up in a narrow cave, gasping for breath. He was covered in blood, his signature black cloak torn to shreds. The gunshot wound on his thigh was deep and ugly, burned black at the edges from the heat of my bullet. The poison cut on his side, from his own ally's knife, was starting to rot. He pulled out a small bottle and drank the dark red liquid inside. It wouldn't cure the poison completely, but it would slow it down. The wounds themselves would just have to heal with time. He looked down at something gripped tightly in his hand. A palm-sized fragment chipped off the temple wall, covered in faded silver-white ancient symbols. When the purification light swept through and should have killed him too, this fragment had suddenly thrown up a thin silver shield around him. The destructive light passed right by without touching him, almost like the purification system had mistaken him for someone authorized to be there. That was his own guess. Anyway, he didn't really understand why it worked. He laughed hoarsely. Surviving an ancient ruin. Not many people can say that. He held the fragment up to his eyes, the dim silver light reflecting in his dark red pupils. Even though it wasn't the real inheritance treasure, something pulled out of an ancient ruin like that had to be incredibly valuable. No one in 100 years had ever managed to bring anything out of one of these ruins, not even a grain of sand. The researchers back at Night Owl headquarters would lose their minds over it. But he wasn't planning on handing it over. He'd paid for it with his life today. It was his. Then the humiliation of the fight came rushing back to him. Ming Zhang, head of the Night Owl organization's Xinjiang branch. A peak level, 42 awakened. An S-rank class, soul-devouring underworld lord. A name that struck fear across the entire underworld of Xinjiang City. And today, some kid barely past level 10 had wiped the floor with him. 4 of his men were dead, his twin sides destroyed in a single shot, and he'd had to crawl away like a beaten dog. It was humiliating. He breathed hard, hatred burning in his eyes. Lin Yue, you think you won? His pale lips curled into a cruel smile. You think getting that inheritance means you can do whatever you want now? He looked down at his own left hand. A thin trace of grayish-black mist still clung to his fingertips, barely visible unless you looked closely. That was something that had slipped into my body during our close fight, through the corrosive energy of his scythe. Nether Corpse Chi, his own secret technique as a soul-devouring underworld lord. Unlike normal poison, this one didn't act fast. It would lie hidden deep in the body like a sleeping snake. For the first 3 days, there'd be almost no symptoms, maybe a little itching near the wound, but it would already be crawling through the bloodstream into the organs. By the 4th day, the infected area would start to rot. By the 5th day, it would spread through the whole body and start eating into the brain. By the 7th day, every vein would be destroyed, every organ consumed, and the mind completely wiped out, leaving behind nothing but a puppet that Ming Zhang could control completely. No antidote in the world could cure it except the one he made himself. Leaning against the cave wall, his pale face twisted into a sick smile. 7 days, he whispered, gripping the silver fragment tight, his eyes burning with something close to madness. In 7 days, you'll belong to me. Your gun, your inheritance, all your secrets, all of it will be mine. His hoarse laughter echoed through the cave for a long time. Outside, the wind howled across the empty wasteland. My off-road vehicle roared across the dry wasteland, dust kicking up behind the tires. I drove with one hand on the wheel, my left arm resting on the window. At first I didn't think much about the strange feeling in my right arm. But as I got closer to Xinjiang City, the itch turned into a sharp, stinging pain. It wasn't just on my skin anymore. It was crawling deep into the muscle, climbing up through my veins. I pulled over near an abandoned gas station and unzipped my sleeve. The light purple mark had grown bigger and was spreading up my arm through the veins. Under the skin, I could see faint dark red poison lines. This wasn't an ordinary poison. I didn't waste time. I got back in the car and floored it straight to the city. I walked into Tianbao Tower in the central shopping district. A female attendant was helping another customer when she noticed me at the door. She recognized my tactical gear. It was one of theirs. Then she recognized my face. A few days ago, I'd come in wearing torn low-tier gear to sell some monster materials. She'd thought I was just some poor kid back then. Now she knew I'd placed first in the new recruit exam, and she could tell just from my eyes that something serious had happened to me since then. She dropped her other customer immediately and rushed over. "Honored guest, you're finally here," she said, bowing slightly. "What can I get you today? Or would you like to go straight to the VIP room upstairs?" I didn't care about the fake politeness. "Antidote," I said flatly. "Bring me your most expensive, most effective one. Something that can handle multiple combined toxins." Her eyes lit up, and she led me through the hall into the VIP potion section in the back. The display cases were made of reinforced bulletproof glass, filled with glowing potion bottles. She typed in a code at the main case and carefully brought out a silver temperature-controlled box. Inside were 3 vials glowing bright green. "Honored guest, this is our top-tier product. A-grade universal high-level antidote, spring of life, she said, leaning in and lowering her voice. Made by master alchemists using rare herb essences. Whether it's high-level monster venom from the wasteland or a special poison skill from an awakened person, one shot, and you're cured. She held up a finger. 1 vial, 1 million credits. I checked the item description. Item, spring of life, A-grade. Effect, removes over 90% of known toxins in the target's body, with ongoing health recovery. I'll take all 3, I said, pulling out an unnamed crystal card and tossing it on the counter. The 5 million credit card I'd taken off Blood Crow. She swiped it and processed the payment quickly. I didn't wait around. I grabbed 1 vial, popped the cap, unzipped my sleeve to show the dark red poison lines now reaching my elbow. The attendant went pale just looking at it. She'd never seen a poison wound like that before. The way the marks crawled under the skin made her skin crawl too. I stuck the needle into my vein and pushed the green liquid in. A cool energy spread through my blood fast. But the moment that cool medicine touched the dark red poison lines, they suddenly twisted violently. The light purple skin turned pitch black. Pain exploded through my arm. I grunted, cold sweat breaking out on my forehead instantly. This wasn't pain on the surface. It was tearing directly at my nerves. The A-grade antidote hadn't calmed the poison down at all. It had enraged it. The dark marks devoured the medicine's power and swelled up even bigger, then surged forward, breaking past my elbow and climbing up my upper arm. I clenched my fist and bit down hard, refusing to make a sound. Wah! What's happening? The attendant shrieked, stumbling backward. Their proudest A-grade potion wasn't suppressing the poison. It was making it worse. If something happened to me in her store, she'd be in serious trouble. Please wait. I'll get Elder Du, she shouted, running toward the back in a panic, her heels clattering against the floor. I leaned against the counter, breathing hard. Then a blue status screen flashed in front of my eyes. Status: Nether Corpse Chi Corrosion, Stage 1. Warning: high-level foreign toxin detected. This toxin has a devouring trait. Full outbreak expected in 72 hours. I didn't have much time. A moment later, quick footsteps approached from the back. Elder Du, Tianbao Tower's chief appraiser and the real owner behind the place, came hurrying out in gray traditional robes. He spotted me right away. Young Lin, surprise flashed in his eyes. He walked straight to me, his gaze locking onto the black poison crawling up my arm. His brow furrowed. He held 2 fingers an inch away from the marks, letting a soft white energy reach out to test it. The moment that white energy got close, a thin gray-black mist shot out from the poison and burned it away instantly. Elder Du yanked his hand back, hissing in a sharp breath. He studied it a moment longer, then looked up at me, his face dead serious. Young Lin, this isn't an ordinary poison, he said, taking a deep breath. I waited for him to continue. He looked at the writhing black marks again and said, low and grim, if I'm reading this right, this is Nether Corpse Chi. It carries the caster's own energy signature. It has a will of its own, and it devours any outside energy to grow stronger. That antidote you just injected basically fed it a full meal. He stood up straight and shook his head slowly. Right now, there isn't a single potion on the open market in Xinjiang City that can save you. Elder Du pulled his hand back, his face dead serious. This Nether Corpse Chi has a unique forbidden energy mixed into it, he said quietly, staring at the boiling dark marks on my arm. It doesn't just drain the host's life force. It climbs through the whole body and eats away at the brain. Using a normal antidote just feeds it and speeds everything up. I looked at my arm. The poison really was spreading faster now. Can it be cured? I asked, staying calm. I know my way around Xinjiang City, but this isn't my specialty, he admitted. A foreign toxin carrying the caster's own energy signature like this, Tianbao Tower can't help you. I nodded, zipped my sleeve back up, and turned to leave. Wait, young Lin, Elder Du stopped me. He'd watched me walk in fresh from a near-death fight, carrying a deadly poison, and not even flinch. That kind of calm meant either I'd given up, or I just wasn't afraid of dying. He could tell it was the second one. I stopped. He pulled a dark gold coin from his sleeve and handed it to me. No markings except a beetle engraved on the surface. I can't save you, but someone else might, he said. There's a strange-tempered poison master who's been hiding in the underground black market in the West District for years. He knows all kinds of obscure poisons and antidotes. He lowered his voice. This coin is my token. Find a shop with no sign, just a string of bone wind chimes hanging outside the door. I took the coin. It was heavy and cold, definitely not ordinary metal. The black market has no laws. Only strength matters there. You're already hurt, so be careful, he warned. Thanks, I said, and walked out of Tianbao Tower. The sun outside was blinding. I pulled my hood low and headed straight for the West District. The West District slums were nothing like the central shopping street. Narrow alleys full of dirty water, tin shacks thrown together, and the air reeked of rot. I cut through a maze of back alleys and stopped at an old, abandoned bunker entrance. 2 guards leaned against the iron door, smoking, old rifles in hand. They eyed my gear, glanced at the long weapon case on my back with a flicker of greed, but didn't try anything. I tossed them a few bills, and they pulled the heavy door open. I went down a rusted staircase into the underground black market. It was a massive underground city that never saw sunlight. The streets were a mess, packed with stalls selling everything. Illegal guns, smugglers offloading stolen goods, scavengers, even bounty hunters openly trading wanted awakened people's severed heads. The smell of violence and blood hung in every corner. I walked through the mud in my plain tactical coat, hood covering most of my face, trying not to stand out. A few greedy looks slid my way from the shadows, but after sizing up how I walked and carried myself, they backed off. In a place like this, predator and prey could switch places in a second. Nobody made a move without being sure. I pushed through the pain building in my arm and kept searching the maze of alleys for the shop with bone wind chimes. As I turned a corner past a pile of scrap machinery, I heard loud footsteps and shouting ahead. Move it! Get out of the way before I kill you! A dozen or so men in black leather jackets, armed with all kinds of weapons, came barreling down the alley, blocking the whole path. Vendors nearby dropped their heads, too scared to look up. The man leading them had a cheap mechanical arm for a right hand, gears grinding loudly with every step. I stopped walking. The leader, busy bragging to his crew, almost walked straight into me. You blind? You're blocking Tiger Bro's way, one of his men shouted, shoving a mini submachine gun against my chest. I grabbed his wrist with my left hand and twisted it hard. Bone cracked. He dropped to the ground screaming, the gun falling from his hand. The rest of the gang exploded into chaos, weapons raised at me instantly. You're dead, the leader roared, finally turning to look at me properly. The moment his eyes landed on my face under the hood, he froze. Li Hu. I recognized him immediately. Back in the goblin sewers, he was the foreman who tried to cheat me out of my pay, so I blew his arm off with a shotgun. I hadn't expected to run into him here. Wang Biao had gone after me in the wasteland trying to kill me, and ended up dead in an abandoned factory instead. Li Hu clearly didn't know that yet. With Wang Biao gone, this thug had clawed his way into the gang's temporary leadership through sheer cruelty. Li Hu stared at me, frozen for a good 2 seconds, like he thought he was seeing a ghost. An F-rank trash gunner going into the dangerous wasteland and coming back alive? Impossible. Wang Biao had taken some of the gang's best men to hunt me down. You. Li Hu pointed at me, his voice shaking. His shock quickly turned into twisted joy and hatred. He noticed the dark red marks peeking out from under my sleeve, my arm hanging stiff and barely moving. Injured. His fear melted away, replaced by months of pent-up rage. If Wang Biao never made it back, he was probably dead in some monster's mouth out there. And this kid had probably barely crawled back too, badly hurt. This was his chance for revenge, handed to him by fate itself. He touched his cold, heavy mechanical arm. Every night since I took his real one, he dreamed about the pain of that shotgun blast. He stepped closer, glaring at me, face twisting with excitement. Lin Yue, he spat through his teeth. You little bastard is still alive? I just stood there, arms at my sides, looking at him without any reaction, like I was looking at a corpse. That indifference set him off completely. He was running this gang now, with over a dozen men behind him. He wasn't going to tolerate being looked at like that by someone he used to think was worthless. He grinned and raised his mechanical arm. With a sharp mechanical whine, the front of it split open and a high-frequency chainsaw blade, 1/2 meter long, popped out, spinning with a screeching whine. You took my arm back then. Today I'll turn you into mincemeat. He waved a hand behind him. Surround him. His men spread out instantly, boxing me into the narrow alley. One of them, a guy with bleached yellow hair, swung a steel pipe and pointed it at my face. Kid, nobody's saving you today. Kneel down and beg Tiger Bro. Maybe we'll leave your body in one piece. Standing in the muddy alley, surrounded by a dozen armed thugs, I stayed calm. The market vendors nearby quickly packed up their stalls and backed away. Gang fights happened here all the time, and nobody wanted to get caught in the blood. I didn't bother reaching for my gun. Wasting it on street trash like this would be pointless. My right arm throbbed with pain, the dark poison still crawling under my skin, completely stiff and useless. The yellow-haired guy charged first, swinging a steel rod at my head with a bloodthirsty grin, already picturing my skull cracking open. His friends howled with excitement, boxing me in from every side. I didn't back away. I drove forward into the crowd. He swung and missed completely. Then I hit him with a clean side kick to the ribs. The crack echoed through the alley as he flew backward and crashed into 3 of his own guys, blood spraying from his mouth. Kill him. All of you, attack, Lin Yue screamed from behind. Blades and clubs came at me from every direction. I moved through the tight space without even using my energy, just raw strength and combat skill. A bald guy swung a machete at me. I sidestepped, the blade grazing past my nose, then grabbed his wrist and twisted it until it snapped. His machete dropped. I followed with a knee straight to his jaw. Teeth and blood flew, and he dropped unconscious before he could even scream. I used only my left hand and my legs. No wasted movement. Every strike aimed at something vital. One guy tried to attack from behind. I kicked back without even turning around, shattering his knee. Another raised a submachine gun at me. I grabbed the barrel, forced it up, and headbutted him in the face, crushing his nose. The alley filled with screaming. The vendors watching from the shadows had seen plenty of violence in this world, but the clean, brutal efficiency of what I was doing still sent chills down their spines. It wasn't even a fight anymore, just a one-sided beatdown. I weaved through the crowd with perfect precision, dodging every hit without even getting my clothes touched. One thug lunged at my back with a knife. I kicked backward without looking, my heel smashing into his jaw and shattering the bone. He went down silent and unconscious. I followed with a punch to another guy's temple, and he dropped instantly. Less than 30 seconds later, the alley was full of groaning bodies, broken arms, broken legs, none of them able to stand. Blood mixed with the dirty water on the ground. The vendors and scavengers hiding nearby stared at me differently now, taking down over a dozen gang members with one hand. That was the kind of strength only high-level awakened people had. Lin Yue stood frozen, his grin gone, his mechanical arm shaking uncontrollably even as the saw blade kept spinning. This wasn't possible. The same F-rank trash he used to push around in the sewers, fighting like this? He looked at me, and my eyes held no emotion at all, like I was looking at an insect. His heart sank. Wang Biao had taken the gang's best fighters into the wasteland to kill me. None of them had come back. And here I was alive. The truth hit him all at once. Wang Biao was dead, killed by me. Fear wiped out whatever was left of his courage. He screamed and turned to run, forgetting about revenge, forgetting about being gang leader. He just wanted to survive. But the weight of his mechanical arm slowed him down, and he stumbled and crawled more than ran. Did I say you could leave? I said coldly. I kicked a bloody machete up off the ground with my foot, then kicked it again with my other leg, launching it forward like a blur. It tore through the air and slammed straight into the back of Lin Yue's thigh, the force throwing him face first onto the ground. He screamed in agony, his cheeks scraping bloody against the rough pavement, both hands clutching his leg as blood poured between his fingers. I walked up and stood over him, then planted my foot on his chest. Lord Lin, Grandfather Lin, please spare me, he sobbed, grabbing onto my ankle, completely ignoring the pain in his leg. I was wrong. I was blind. Just let this nobody go, Lord Lin. That switch happened fast. I almost laughed inside. Trash like him only behaves when they feel real pain. I pressed down harder with my foot. There was a sharp crack. One of his ribs broke. He howled, his body twisting violently. Where's the shop with the bone wind chimes? I asked, flat, no emotion in my voice. Gasping through the pain, he nodded frantically. I'll tell you. I'll tell you. It's at the north end of the black market. Past the scrapyard, take the third left turn, the last tin shack at the end. That's the place. Before he even finished talking, I kicked him hard in the temple. His eyes rolled back and his head slammed into the ground, knocked out completely. I didn't bother looking at the pile of bodies behind me. I stepped over Li Hu and kept walking deeper into the black market. The pain in my arm flared up worse after all that fighting. The dark poison marks had crawled all the way up to my shoulder now. The nether corpse chi was draining my strength fast, and cold sweat broke out across my forehead. I needed to find that poison master, fast. I passed through the noisy outer market and into a quiet scrapyard area. The light got dimmer, junk machinery and rusted armored vehicle wrecks piled up on both sides of the path. I took the third turn and went left. The alley ended. A rundown tin shack came into view, a string of wind chimes made from small, unknown animal skulls hanging from the roof. There was no wind, but the chimes clinked together with a heavy, dull sound. A thick, sharp medicinal smell leaked out from the door cracks, strong enough to drown out every other smell around it. I walked up to the door. No knocking. I just pushed the rusted handle down and shoved it open. The door creaked loudly as it swung inward. Inside was pitch black, impossible to make out anything. No warning at all. A faint whistling sound cut through the darkness. A glowing blue needle shot straight toward the spot between my eyes. The blue needle shot straight for my forehead. I stepped back half a step and turned my head just enough. The needle grazed past my temple and buried itself in the rusted door behind me, still shaking from the impact. An old, sharp laugh came from the dark. Catching my test needle, not bad. Come in. The lights flickered on. The tin shack was cramped, every wall lined with metal shelves packed with glass jars. Limbs, organs, even half a skull floated in strange liquids, glowing pale under the light. Rotting monster parts sat piled in a corner, the smell mixing with the thick medicine stench in the air. In the middle of the room sat a thin old man on an animal hide mat, his hair a mess of gray, a brass three-legged furnace in front of him pouring out purple smoke. His eyes looked clouded, but there was something sharp buried deep in them. I flicked the gold coin toward him. He caught it easily and rubbed his thumb over the beetle engraving. "Old do sure like sending people my way every few days," he said with a smirk. Then his eyes sharpened and locked onto my limp right arm. "Nether corpse chi," he said, without even getting up. He stared at the spreading dark marks and scoffed. "And not the normal kind either. This one has at least 30 years of the caster's own cultivation packed into it." "Kid, did you piss off Mingzong?" I stepped closer. He waved for me to hold out my arm, pulled out a 3-inch silver needle from his sleeve, and pricked the edge of the poison mark. A drop of grayish-black blood fell onto a jade plate below. The plate hissed, then cracked into pieces within 3 seconds. His face darkened. "You used an antidote already, Spring of Life?" I said. He smacked his thigh and cursed. "Idiot. That A-grade antidote is packed with concentrated life energy. The corpse chi ate that energy and doubled its spread. You had 6 days left normally. Now you've got 3, at most." He held up 3 fingers in front of my face. "After 3 days, your brain gets completely hollowed out, and you become Ming Zhang's puppet." I kept my eyes on him. "Can it be cured?" He studied me for a moment, then folded 1 finger down, leaving 2 up. "2 conditions," he said, voice rough. "First, I need 3 A-grade energy cores as an ingredient." I pulled out 3 glowing A-grade cores and dropped them on the mat without hesitation. A flash of surprise crossed his eyes, but he kept going. "Second condition, during the cure, the corpse chi will fight back one last time, as hard as it can. The pain will feel like every vein in your body getting ripped out and shoved back in. You have to stay fully conscious the whole time. If your mind slips, even for a second, the chi will rush straight into your brainstem." He tapped his own temple. "Once that happens, nothing can save you." He paused, voice turning cold. "I've been a healer for 40 years. I've seen plenty of people get hit with this poison. Not one of them managed to stay conscious through the cure. Every single one chose to end it themselves instead." I tore off my sleeve, exposing my whole arm. The dark marks had already crawled up to my shoulder, veins bulging purple-black under the skin. I looked him in the eye and said, "Flat, start." He stared at me for a full 3 seconds, searching for any sign of fear. He found none. Then he threw his head back and laughed so hard the roof rattled. "Good. Excellent." He slapped his thigh. "I like crazy people who aren't afraid to die." He got up fast, grabbed 7 colored glass bottles off the shelf, and dumped the bugs and thick liquid inside into the furnace. Purple smoke surged out violently, and the room turned cold. He picked up the 3 cores, carved tiny markings into them with a special needle, and squeezed out the pure energy inside as liquid gold, feeding it into the furnace. The purple smoke and gold light swirled together, boiling loudly. A few minutes later, he poured a bowl of thick dark green liquid and handed it to me. "Drink this. It'll pull the corpse chi up from deep in your veins to the surface. Once it's all gathered there, I'll use the needle to seal it and force it out of your body." He stared at me hard. "No matter how much it hurts, you cannot pass out." As I took the bowl, my eyes caught something on the back of his left hand, a tiny black tattoo of a closed eye. It flashed me back to the red eye symbol on that mysterious letter from Lu Jinxiong's stash. Different shape, but the same hidden, sinister feeling behind it. I said nothing and filed it away in my mind. I drank the whole bowl in one go. It burned ice-cold down my throat and tore into my stomach. A second later, a violent wave of heat exploded from my gut and tore through every vein in my body. I grunted, veins bulging on my forehead, the dark marks on my arm twisting violently. Thin gray-black threads got ripped out from deep in my veins and dragged toward the surface of my skin. The pain hit everywhere at once. Not like a blade, like worms chewing through my bones from the inside. I clenched my jaw and dug my left hand into the wooden floor, splinters jamming under my nails. I gasped for air, sweat soaking through my back. The old man held his needle ready, watching the poison marks closely, prepared to seal them at any second. Right as the medicine took full effect, my vision flickered. My status screen popped up, but instead of its usual pale blue, it was covered in blood red. Severe warning. Nether corpse chi detected resonating with an unknown energy. Resonance source locked. Host soul core. Warning, the corpse chi's path has shifted. It has left the skin surface route and is now converging toward the soul core. My eyes went wide. At the same moment, the old man's needle jolted violently in his hand. The light on it flickered out of control, the steady reading completely breaking apart. His face went pale. He jumped to his feet, eyes wide, staring at my arm. The poison wasn't rising to the surface like it should. It was sinking deeper, fast, right before our eyes. "This is wrong," he said, voice shaking, barely hiding his fear. "The corpse chi isn't heading to the skin. It's burrowing straight into your soul." He stepped back, jaw clenched. "What exactly is hiding inside you?" The dark green liquid didn't work the way the old man expected. The nether corpse chi went completely out of control. Instead of rising to my skin, the poison started collapsing inward, all of it gathering into one solid black thread that punched straight through my veins. My veins couldn't hold against it. They shattered piece by piece. The poison pushed through my mental defenses and slammed into my soul core. My body went rigid. My eyes lost focus, my vision blurring out completely. Pain beyond anything physical hit my nervous system directly. My left hand dug into the hide mat below me, nails tearing through the leather and into the wood underneath, splinters jamming into my fingers, blood pouring out. But I didn't even feel it. The old man noticed something was wrong. His face went pale. He gripped his needle tight, pouring all his energy into it, trying to force the poison back with white light. The moment the needle touched my skin, a violent force exploded out from inside me, shattering his energy on contact and surging back up through the needle itself. His hand split open, blood spraying out. The needle flew out of his grip, bending at an impossible angle in midair before slamming into the rotting ceiling. He stumbled back 2 steps, staring at my rapidly graying face. "I can't seal it," he said, voice dry and cracked. "The chi has already left your body completely. It's in your soul now. My needle only works on veins and pressure points. It's useless against the soul." He looked at me sitting there and said, almost with pity, "Kid, from here, it's all on you. The chi isn't trying to get out anymore. It's burrowing straight into your soul. Something in there must be pulling it. If that thing can't hold up, your soul gets torn apart completely. No reincarnation, nothing left." I couldn't hear him anymore. My mind had fallen into total emptiness. This was my mindscape. No light, no sound. I looked down at my soul and saw countless gray-black threads wrapped around it like living vines, drilling deeper through every crack, eating away at my will with each inch they pushed in. Not far ahead, the thick poison swirled together and formed a pale, twisted face. Ming Zhang's energy signature, left behind in the poison, had fully woken up. It didn't just want to kill my body, it wanted to take it over completely. The face opened its mouth and sneered. Give up. Your willpower's too weak. Be a good little meal, and I'll use your body to turn Xinjiang City into a graveyard. My soul felt the grip tightening, my mind starting to blur at the edges, the pain trying to break my reason apart. I stared at that twisted face and smirked. Try to swallow me. You'll break your teeth. I dropped every defense and forced what was left of my will into one sharp point. I drove that point straight into the threads wrapped around me. Every thread I cut sent a tearing pain through the deepest part of my soul. I clenched down and kept swinging, betting everything on the idea that I was just too stubborn to break. Right as my willpower was about to run dry, a deep rumble echoed from the very bottom of my mind. A crack split open in the void with no warning. Pure silver-white light poured out of it. This was the same energy that had sunk into me from the ancient temple's inheritance. It had been sleeping deep in my soul this whole time, never reacting to physical damage. Only now, with my soul itself under real threat, did it finally respond. The moment the light touched the corpse chi, the gray-black threads screamed and recoiled. They'd run into something they couldn't beat. Ming Zhang's twisted face contorted in fury, let out a furious roar, and shattered completely in the silver light. A status screen flashed in my mind. Dormant, inheritance mark, energy detected in host soul core, energy activated by foreign invasion. Performing automatic purification. The silver-white light filled my entire mind. The corpse chi burned and evaporated under it fast. The threads wrapped around my soul, snapped apart piece by piece, and disappeared. A warm energy wrapped around my soul, and the willpower I'd lost slowly started coming back. Back in the shack, the old man stared wide-eyed at my arm. The dark red marks were fading away right in front of him, faster than should have been possible. The skin underneath returned to its normal color, even glowing faintly. Gray-black mist got pushed out through my pores, hissing the second it touched the air before disappearing completely. The old man stood frozen. 40 years as a healer, and he'd never seen anyone purify nether corpse chi on their own, from the soul level. What scared him more was the faint silver-white energy leaking out of me. Every awakened person's energy today carried some kind of elemental trait. This silver energy had none. It just radiated absolute dominance, like nothing else mattered next to it. This wasn't part of any known energy system today. His fingers trembled. In his whole life, he'd only ever read a few scattered lines about this kind of energy in a torn old manuscript. An ancient inheritance, he muttered, his frail body shaking. The way he looked at me changed completely. The earlier condescension was gone, replaced by deep caution. Who exactly are you? He asked quietly. I opened my eyes, my vision clear again. I looked down at my arm. The dark marks were gone, replaced by a faint silver glow under the skin that faded into nothing after 3 seconds. My whole body felt clean, lighter than it had in a long time. That drained, weak feeling completely gone. A new status screen popped up. Status: Nether Corpse Chi fully removed. Bonus: Inheritance mark and soul core activated. Awakening level increased from 0.1% to 2.3%. New unlock: Expanded soul perception range. I clenched my right fist, and my knuckles cracked. My arm wasn't just back to normal. It felt stronger than before the poison ever hit me. The bigger change was in my senses. I didn't even need to look to track every drop of liquid falling in the room, or to feel the old man's heartbeat racing unevenly. The poison Ming Zhang left in me hadn't killed me. It had fed the inheritance mark instead. I stood up, rolled my shoulder, and looked at him. The poison's gone. He brushed the dust off his hands, forcing his face calm despite the fear still in his eyes. I didn't cure your poison. Something inside you did. My medicine was just a trigger, at best. He glanced at the 3A grade cores on the floor and swept them into his sleeve. Still, I'm keeping these. His tone turned dead serious. Kid, whatever power you've got inside you, bury it deep. If the wrong people catch the scent of it, you'll have bigger problems than 10 Ming Zhangs combined. I didn't answer right away. I was staring at the small black tattoo on the back of his left hand, a closed eye. What happened just now told me something. Whoever this old man really was, he genuinely tried his best to save me. Someone willing to do that honestly deserved a chance to be tested with a real card. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the note I'd taken from Lu Jinxiong's bracelet. I flipped it over and held the blood-red slit pupil eye symbol right in front of his face. A closed black eye? An open red one, I said, watching his expression closely. You know this symbol. The moment he saw the red eye, his pupils shrank. All the color drained from his wrinkled face, turning paper white. He grabbed my wrist suddenly, his frail fingers gripping with surprising strength. Where did you get this? He demanded, his voice shaking with fear he couldn't hide. I looked down at his trembling hand and said nothing. He took a sharp breath and let go like he'd been burned, stumbling back 2 steps. His eyes kept flicking between the red eye on the note and the closed eye tattoo on his own hand. The blood eyes, he forced out, voice dry and cracked. How could they be in Xinjiang City? The federal military wiped that group out years ago. He paused, throat tightening. If what's on that note is real, then everyone in this city is going to die. I frowned, about to speak. Outside, the bone wind chimes hanging from the roof suddenly shook violently. There was no wind in this narrow underground alley, yet the chimes clattered together fast and sharp. Not just that, the glass jars on the shelves started trembling too, the severed limbs floating inside bobbing with the vibration. The air temperature dropped to freezing in an instant. The old man's face went from white to gray. He spun toward the locked iron door. Someone's coming, he said, voice tight, his hand quietly reaching for the pouch at his waist. And it's not just one. The bone chimes outside rattled hard. The rusted door blew open with brute force, twisted metal jamming into the walls on both sides. 3 figures stood in the alley. One was tall and thin, wearing a pale bird-beak mask with a blood-red slit I painted right on the forehead, the exact same symbol from the note in my pocket. Behind him stood 2 fighters in black tactical gear, their energy clearly stronger than anything the gang outside had, at least level 30 or above. The masked man tilted his head and looked past me, locking eyes with the old man behind me. Old Gugu, 20 years, he said, voice smooth and cold. A traitor of the Blood Eye Society. Ready to die? His eyes drifted to me like I was nothing more than a bug in the way. And you, kid, bad luck, but you're coming too. The old man's frail body tensed. His clouded eyes flashed with cold, killing intent as he stepped in front of me. You shouldn't have pulled out that note, he whispered fast. That's a Blood Eye Society tracking mark. Leave it exposed for more than 10 seconds, and they can follow the trail straight to you. That explained it. The note itself was a tracker. The moment I'd taken it out of Lu Jinxiong's bracelet, my location had already been marked. I used to be their poison master, the old man said, eyes locked on the 3 at the door. 20 years running, and these maniacs finally caught up to me. The masked man flicked his finger. His 2 men exploded into motion. One formed dark red energy blades and charged straight at the old man, going for the priority target first. The other circled toward me with a blurred sprint, throwing 3 poison blue darts to cut off every escape angle. To them, I was just an ant to step on. But the moment those darts left his hand, I moved. I snapped my gun off the quick release on my back. My new soul perception spread out around me. Within 15 meters, I could see every motion, every spin of every dart, in perfect slow motion in my head. I didn't even look at the one attacking me. I aimed at the other guy, the one charging the old man. I fired. The bullet tore through his shoulder mid-charge. He couldn't redirect in time. His shoulder blade shattered from the impact, and his energy blade scattered into sparks. He screamed and crashed into a shelf. At almost the same instant, the 3 darts reached my face. I tilted my head just enough to dodge all 3 by a hair, twisted my wrist, and fired left. Second shot, straight into his chest. The impact threw him backward, blasting a hole through his gear. He died instantly, no time to even scream. Less than 5 seconds, and both of them were down. The shack went silent. The masked man froze, watching 2 of his level 30 men get taken out cleanly by a kid he hadn't even bothered to take seriously. The way I'd read the fight, the cold calm I'd shown, that wasn't normal for someone my age. He went quiet for 2 seconds. Interesting, he said, his voice losing all its softness, turning ice cold. I underestimated you. Such strength at such a young age, a shame. Before he finished talking, a suffocating wave of energy burst out of him. The glass jars around the room shattered one after another, liquid spraying everywhere. This was the kind of power only a peak level 40 fighter could put out. He raised his hand, and a massive blood red eye took shape in the air. No lid, no white, just a churning red mass staring straight at me. An invisible wave of mental force crashed down on me like a tidal wave. Pain tore through my mind, my vision flooding red. My legs gave out, and I dropped to one knee. A direct hit on the soul. Die, he said, fingers closing into a fist. Right as the eye was about to crush my mind completely, the old man moved. He kicked over his brass furnace, sending the leftover green poison liquid flying like a spear straight at the masked man's face. At the same time, he bit his own tongue hard and spat blood onto the closed-eye tattoo on his hand. The tattoo drank the blood and snapped open. Curse backlash, the old man roared in agony. A thick cloud of dark green poison mist exploded out of every pore in his body, filling the entire shack instantly. The masked man had to cut his mental attack short, jumping back and raising a blood-red shield in front of him. The mist hit the shield and hissed, eating into it. The black-clad man with the shattered shoulder, still trapped near the door, couldn't escape in time. The moment the mist touched his exposed skin, it dissolved him into a puddle of bloody mess before he could even scream. The pressure on my mind vanished instantly. I gasped for air, veins bulging on my forehead. The silver-white light deep in my soul core had flared up on its own the second the poison touched my skin, forming a thin shield that kept the mist out completely. The old man had used almost everything he had left, his whole life's cultivation and willpower, just to buy me one shot at fighting back. I lifted my head. My soul perception cut through the mist and locked onto the masked man's position. I raised my gun. Suddenly, the silver-white light from my soul core surged up through my arm and poured straight into the gun itself. Ancient silver patterns lit up across the barrel. Inheritance mark energy resonating with inheritance weapon, Soul Eater, current round enhanced with ancient purification effect. My eyes went cold. I pulled the trigger. The shot sounded different this time, not a dull blast, but a clear ringing hum. A bullet trailing silver-white flame tore through the thick mist, leaving a straight, empty path behind it in the air. The masked man's eyes went wide. He could feel it. Whatever was wrapped around that bullet could actually kill him. He poured everything he had into reinforcing his red shield to its max. The silver bullet hit the shield. The moment the two touched, the red shield melted away like ice in boiling water. Ancient purification energy was a hard counter against this kind of dark, forbidden power. The bullet tore through the shield, grazed his right forearm, ripping away flesh, and blasted through the brick wall behind him. He grunted in pain and staggered back. His bird mask cracked down the middle from the shockwave, revealing half of his pale, twisted face. He clutched his bleeding arm and stared at me, all his earlier mockery gone, replaced by deep fear and a wild, manic look. An ancient inheritance. It's really an ancient inheritance, he rasped, suddenly putting it together. That fool Lu Zhenxiong. He died at your hands. He didn't attack again. His body started flickering and distorting, ripples spreading through the space around him. A high-level escape technique. Kid, even with an ancient inheritance, nothing changes. His voice echoed from the rippling air. The Dragon Spine plan has already started. In 7 days, this city will see the true door open. Your inheritance will become the perfect offering to the blood god. The ripples faded. He was gone completely. The shack fell silent. The green mist dissolved fast once it lost his energy backing it. I lowered my gun and turned to the old man. He was slumped against the shelf, completely drained, like a tree that had had every drop of water sucked out of it. The curse backlash had taken almost everything he had left. I walked over and crouched beside him. He coughed up black blood and shook his head weakly. My time's up, he said, barely audible. His shaking hand reached into his robe and pulled out a small animal hide scroll, pressing it into my palm. This is my life's work, he managed between breaths. Poison crafting isn't exactly an honest trade, but it's useful. He made a wet, choking sound, then forced out a few more words. Wanted to take it to my grave. Now, it's yours. I gripped the scroll tight. He grabbed my wrist, his bony fingers digging in hard. The blood eyes coming back. It's not random. That bird mask's 7 days. Might be real. His eyes went unfocused. His lips moved twice more, but no sound came out. His hand slipped from my wrist. He closed his eyes. His breathing stopped completely. I sat there in silence for a moment. Then I laid his body down flat and covered his face with a cloth from the floor. I walked out of the black market back into the city, cold rain mixing with the night wind. I stopped at a corner and pulled the torn cloth off my arm. The black poison marks that had reached my shoulder were completely gone now, just a faint silver shine left under my skin. The inheritance mark had absorbed the nether corpse chi, broken it down, and fed it straight back into my soul core. I clenched my fist. The power flowing through me felt different now, hard to explain, like a thin transparent layer had formed in my mind. Through it, I could even sense the faint life energy of a stray cat in an alley over 10 meters away. Soul perception. The inheritance was waking up. To avoid any eyes that might still be watching, I skipped going back downtown and instead found a small and deep in the West District slums. I paid for a few nights and locked myself in a cramped room, pulling the dusty curtains shut. Sitting on the sagging bed, I pulled out the hide scroll the old man had given me before he died and unrolled it. The first half was packed with his life's worth of poison formulas and antidote knowledge. Names like bone rot powder, blood-burn agent, soul-devouring mist. Every recipe was written in detail, with notes and corrections scribbled in the margins, clearly tested over and over. I raised an eyebrow. Gunners usually fight head-on, but mixing these poisons into my rounds or grenades could be brutal. Worth picking up as a side skill later. I kept flipping through, and near the end, I stopped. There was a hand-drawn map of Xinjiang City's underground tunnel network, marked with hidden passages and abandoned facilities. 3 locations were circled in red: an abandoned subway station in the West District, a deserted underground lab in the northern outskirts, and an abandoned sewage plant in the East District. Next to each red circle was the same blood-red slit eye symbol. It clicked instantly. The old man hadn't just been hiding in the black market for 20 years. He'd been secretly mapping out the Blood Eye Society's hidden bases in this city the whole time. At the bottom of the scroll, written in messy dark red ink, was a final message. Whoever found this scroll needed to gather only people they trusted absolutely and wipe out the Blood Eye Society's hidden cells one by one to stop the Dragon Spine plan. It warned that acting without truly trusted allies would backfire badly, and the whole city could become hell. I almost laughed reading that. Trust. I'd never had the luxury of it. My parents died early, and Lu Zhenxiong only took me in to make me a stepping stone for his daughter. The moment I stopped being useful, he tossed me out without hesitation and even tried to have me killed in the wasteland. In a city this size, I didn't have a single person I could trust at my back. I pulled out my lighter and burned the warning at the bottom of the scroll, the flame lighting up my blank face. I didn't need to trust anyone. I only trusted the gun in my hand. Whatever this door was, whatever the Dragon Spine plan was hiding, if I had no one to trust, then I'd just clear out every threat myself. I packed the scroll away in my bracelet and stood up, drawing Soul Eater. The gray-silver barrel caught the dim light with a cold metallic gleam. Its evolution count sat at 19 out of 100, still needed over 80 more B-grade or higher souls to finish. I checked the cylinder, full and ready, snapped it shut, and pulled back the hammer. The click echoed in the small room. Let's start with base 1. Meanwhile, at the Liu family mansion, Lu Zhenxiong's wife Wang Lan stood by the window in a silk robe, sipping fine wine. According to the plan, her husband should already have the ancient treasure by now. With that inheritance, their daughter Lu Manyu would have a guaranteed spot at the top Awakened Academy, and the Liu family would finally rule the whole city unopposed. Then the front doors exploded inward. Heavy carved wood and twisted metal hinges crashed into the living room like cannon fire. The expensive carpet tore apart. Antique vases shattered across the floor. Wang Lan screamed, her wine glass dropping and shattering against her ankle. She stumbled back and collapsed onto the leather couch. Night wind poured in through the broken doorway, and a figure wrapped in a torn black cloak limped inside on 2 metal crutches, his left leg twisted unnaturally. He pulled back his hood, revealing a pale, blood-streaked face. It was Ming Zong, the Night Owl leader who'd barely escaped the ancient ruin. Badly wounded, but his presence as a peak level 40 fighter still made the air in the room feel suffocating. Who are you? Security. Where's my security? Wang Lan stammered, gripping the edge of the couch. "Stop shouting. Everyone outside is already dead," Ming Zong said, his voice dry and hollow with death. He limped closer, his crutches clicking against the marble floor. "Lu Zhenxiong is dead." Wang Lan's eyes went wide, her whole body freezing. "You're lying. He took the family's best fighters and the scroll. He couldn't possibly." Zhao Wuji. "Han Baichuan. Meng Chang'e." He cut her off, folding down 3 fingers one by one. Not one of them made it out. The ruin swallowed everyone. Her mind went blank. She shook her head violently, trying to deny it. The Lu family finished? Impossible. Mingzong suddenly reached out with one hand and grabbed her by the throat, lifting her straight off the couch. A level 40 fighter's strength was nothing an ordinary woman could resist. Her feet kicked at empty air, her face turning deep purple, her hands clawing uselessly at his iron grip. "Listen carefully," he said, leaning in, the smell of blood thick on his breath. "Whatever was inside that ruin, it's gone. And the one who took it is the trash your family threw away. Lin Yue, your family picked a fight with a real monster." Wang Lan's eyes bulged from lack of air, choking sounds escaping her throat. He let go. She crashed onto the carpet, coughing violently, clutching her throat, tears and snot running down her face. Every trace of her former pride gone. Mingzong straightened up, leaning on his crutches, already thinking through his next move. With all 4 great families now leaderless, this was a perfect opportunity. If the Night Owls could take control of the city's surface power now, once the Blood Eye Society's Dragon Spine plan kicked into full gear, the whole city would be theirs for the taking. He used the tip of his crutch to lift her chin, forcing her to look at him. "Your family has 2 options now. Join us, bow to the Blood Eye Society, and you'll get everything you want. Power, money, strength beyond normal people." He paused, his one good eye narrowing. "Or I snap your neck right now and send you down to join your husband. Either way, the Lu family line ends tonight." Wang Lan trembled, staring at the monster in front of her, and nodded in complete despair. Fear of death crushed whatever reason she had left, while greed for power crept back and even through the despair. As long as Lin Yue died and the family survived, it didn't matter whose dog she became. At the same time, deep underground in the West District, inside an abandoned subway station, once an early transit hub for the city, now sealed off completely, sat the first marked base on the map. It was also the Night Owl branch's old hideout in this city. I crouched behind a ventilation grate 10 meters above the platform, my presence completely hidden, looking down through the slats. The space below was huge, lit bright by powerful floodlights. Rusted train cars sat on the tracks. Over 30 fighters in black tactical gear moved across the platform, every single one of them wearing the blood-red slit-eye symbol on their collar. They were loading crates of dark red crystals into the train cars. My senses swept the crowd. Most were weak, around level 20. Only 2 near the edge of the platform were above level 30, clearly in charge here. I raised my right hand, Soul Eater spinning once in my palm before settling into my grip. Over 30 Blood Eye members. Over 30 guilty souls. I gripped the rusted edge of the vent grate and tore it loose. The rusted screws snapped clean off. As the metal grate fell, I dropped down after it. Already in the air, my gun locked onto the closest level 30 target below. I pulled the trigger. Late at night, alarms tore through Xinjiang City's sky. News of the 4 family heads dying in the wasteland spread like a virus through the whole city. Armored vehicles rolled out. Martial law went into effect, but it couldn't stop the power struggles breaking out everywhere as different branches of the families fought over who'd take control. Fires lit up the East District, and explosions echoed from the southern estates. The whole city fell into chaos. Down in the West District subway station, the killing had just begun. I dropped from the vent 10 meters up, gravity snapping my coat as I fell. Mid-air, I already had my revolver locked on a level 30 leader below who was checking inventory, completely unaware of what was coming. I fired. The bullet went straight through his skull, brains and bones scattering across the rusted rails behind him. His body slammed back onto a crate. I landed steady, knees bending to absorb the impact. B-grade soul claimed. Soul devouring trait triggered. Soul Eater evolution. 20/100. The 30-plus members on the platform froze for a second, stunned by what just happened. The second level 30 leader reacted fast. He kicked aside some gear, pulled a black energy submachine gun, and opened fire right where I'd landed. Bullets tore up the concrete around me in a line of craters. I didn't panic. Instead of retreating, I pushed forward, right into two unaware level 20 grunts nearby. I grabbed both by their collars and hauled them up as human shields just as the gunfire reached me. The bullets tore through both of them instantly. They didn't even get to scream before they turned into bloody rag dolls in my hands. I waited behind their bodies, calm and cold, timing the gun's fire rate and the gap when the magazine would run dry. The second the shooting paused, I reached out from between the two corpses and fired without even needing to aim. My new soul perception already had his forehead marked. The bullet punched straight through his skull. His head exploded, and his headless body crashed onto the rails. B-grade soul claimed. Soul-devouring trait triggered. Soul Eater evolution. 21/100. I let go of the two bodies, and they dropped to the ground. The rest of the group on the platform stood frozen. 2 level 30 leaders dead in under 10 seconds. Fear started spreading through the crowd. A big, muscular guy shouted, his face twisted with greed. He's alone. How many bullets can he have? Rush him together. Whoever kills him gets squad leader. Money talks. A dozen of them, confident in close combat, charged at me with weapons drawn. At this distance, it would take an awakened person only seconds to close the gap. I smirked at the ones leading the charge, holstered my revolver, and pulled out my shotgun, Storm K2, with both hands. I aimed at the thickest part of the crowd and fired. The blast roared, a dark red flame shooting half a meter out of the barrel. Hundreds of tiny steel pellets, packed with energy, sprayed out in a wide arc. The 5 guys in front took the full hit. Their bodies froze mid-air, gear shredding apart, flesh tearing off, the impact throwing them backward as they came apart in mid-air, blood and limbs scattering everywhere. I didn't stop. I kept firing, boom, boom, boom. The whole station flashed with muzzle flame, gunfire drowning out every scream. It was a one-sided slaughter. None of the dozen who charged even got within 5 meters of me before they were turned into pieces on the ground. The smell of blood filled the closed underground space, sickening. The shooting stopped. I stood there, gun pointed down, smoke curling from the hot barrel. The remaining group at the back of the platform broke completely, hands shaking, weapons forgotten, staring at the carnage and then at me. Their will to fight just collapsed. Don't kill me. The big guy who'd shouted about being squad leader was the first to drop to his knees. Please, sir. We didn't want to do this. We're all stuck with low-tier life class awakenings. We can't survive in this city otherwise. The Blood Eye Society forced us to join. Refuse, and you die. Please, spare us. The rest dropped their weapons too, falling to their knees, crying and begging. I looked at them coldly and said nothing. I never trusted crocodile tears. If you put on that uniform and took the Blood Eye Society's resources, you accepted the risk of dying by someone's gun eventually. I raised the shotgun, ready to end this. That's when the begging from the man in front suddenly cut off mid-sentence. He clutched his own throat with both hands, eyes bulging, bloodshot. Ugh! Help! Thick black blood gushed from his mouth. His body convulsed twice and dropped flat, dark purple blotches spreading rapidly across his skin. It wasn't just him. The rest of them broke out with the same symptoms almost at the same instant. Their screams got stuck in their throats. Within 3 seconds, all of them vomited black blood and died where they knelt. The platform went dead silent again. Just the buzz of the floodlights. I lowered my gun, frowning, and walked over to one of the freshly dead bodies. I used my barrel to pull back his collar. A thin black line ran along his neck, crawling toward his heart through the vein. A vicious kill switch. These low-level Blood Eye members all had some kind of poison planted in them. The instant they thought about surrendering or betraying the group, the poison would trigger through their nervous system and kill them within seconds. It immediately reminded me of how Lu Jinxiong died, tortured by his own seal. Different method, same idea underneath. I smirked. That old fox Lu Jinxiong, one of the 4 great families on the surface, but secretly already in bed with the Blood Eye Society this whole time. I left the bodies and walked over to the level 30 leader I'd headshot earlier. Bending down, I picked up the black energy submachine gun from the blood pool. Heavy, made of some high-strength alloy. Item, Assaulter ERT. Type, submachine gun. Grade, B. Trait, High fire rate, minor armor-piercing effect. Not great, but it filled the gap in my mid-range firepower. After clearing the area, I turned to the rusted train cars on the tracks. The doors were wide open, packed with wooden crates. What these people had been loading. I climbed up and pried one open with a crowbar. Inside were dark red crystal stones, fist-sized, rough on the surface, with red thread-like wisps moving inside. I picked one up, ice cold to the touch. I pushed a bit of my senses into it to check. The energy inside was incredibly weak, even less than a basic E-grade core. This was basically industrial junk. What was the Blood Eye Society even using this stuff for? I held the crystal, thinking back to what the bird mask guy said. In 7 days, this city will see the true door. They wouldn't go through all the trouble of setting up hidden bases across the city just to collect garbage. These crystals were probably fuel for some large device, or maybe building blocks for whatever ritual was supposed to open that door. I pocketed one crystal to show Elderdew later, and decided to destroy the rest. Just as I reached for a grenade in my bracelet, a cold, thick presence started seeping out from deep in the tunnel behind the station. Thud, thud. Heavy metal footsteps echoed out of the darkness, slow and steady, getting closer. Note: this chapter is mostly from Ming Zhang's point of view, with Lin Yue's part starting partway through. I've kept Ming Zhang's section in third person since I'm only the narrator for Lin Yue, then switched to first person once the story follows him. Ming Zhang limped out of a hidden side passage near the subway station, leaning on his crutches. He'd just forced Wang Lan into submission and spread word that all 4 family heads were dead. The surface world of Qingjiang City was already falling apart, and he liked how things were going. Once Base 1 finished shipping out its crystals, the Night Owls could swallow up the family's leftover businesses without a fight. But the moment he stepped onto the platform, he froze. The smell of blood hit him instantly. The floodlights were still on, lighting up over 30 corpses scattered everywhere, bullet holes covering every surface. He recognized the pattern immediately, a single attacker, using guns only, the whole massacre done in under 2 minutes. A young, expressionless face flashed through his mind. Lin Yue, he muttered, his voice ice cold. Then he spotted it. A bomb taped to the bottom of a crate, red numbers counting down. 0201. He barely had time to react before the whole car exploded, the weak energy crystals triggering a violent chain reaction that turned the train car into a massive fireball. His shield lasted half a second before shattering. The blast threw him backward through a ticket booth, burying him under rubble. His old wounds tore back open, the black poison crawling further up his neck and across half his face. Furious and barely able to stand, he radioed a warning to his other bases to go on high alert, then ordered Base 2 to push their experimental subjects into combat regardless of the risk, and to activate something called the BloodNet protocol to test them. Now back to my side of things. I moved through the old drainage tunnels under the city, heading toward the northern outskirts, my submachine gun ready, moving fast and silent through the dark. Soul Eater's evolution was stuck at 21/100. The weaklings at Base 1 weren't enough. I needed stronger targets. While crossing a narrow concrete pipe, I stopped. My soul perception picked up something off. I shone my tactical light on the wall beside me and found 5 deep gouges torn straight through the thick steel pipe. The metal peeled outward, the cuts rough. No human claw could have made marks that wide apart. This looked like something from a massive beast. Dark red residue clung to the edges. I pulled out my dagger and scraped a bit of it onto the blade. It smelled foul. Worse, under my flashlight, it was moving, slowly, almost crawling up the blade on its own, like it had some kind of primitive will. I flicked it off into the sewage water. The moment it touched the water, it hissed white smoke and burned a small hole through the surface. This wasn't any monster I'd seen before. The Blood Eye Society wasn't just stockpiling crystals down here. They were brewing something far worse. 20 minutes later, I reached the outer perimeter of the abandoned lab in the northern district, an old chemical plant's underground garage, now converted into a fortified checkpoint. Sandbags formed a barrier. 2 spotlights crossed the entrance, and an armored vehicle sat parked dead center with a 6-barrel machine gun mounted on top, aimed straight at the entrance, a thick ammo belt feeding into it. I crouched behind a vent grate above and watched. 6 fully armed guards patrolled the entrance in 2 groups. Something was off about them. The low-level grunts at base 1 had looked numb and checked out. These 6 were tense, holding back real fear, and their eyes barely scanned the dark perimeter outside. Instead, they kept glancing back at the heavy alloy door behind them with a mix of fear and respect. That door led into Base 2's core lab. They weren't guarding against an outside threat. They were watching something inside. I narrowed my eyes, pulled out my sniper rifle, and screwed on a suppressor I'd taken earlier. Plan was simple. Take out the guards quietly, then slip inside. Right as I was about to move, a horrible scream tore through the alloy door. It wasn't fully human, and it wasn't fully animal either. Somewhere in between, pitched impossibly high, full of agony and some sick kind of excitement at the same time. The 6 guards flinched hard. One stumbled back into the sandbags, nearly firing his rifle by accident. Another one failed again. One guard muttered, voice shaking. "Shut up. You want to die?" Another hissed, his own face pale as paper. I stayed in the shadows and put my eye to the scope, aiming at the gap in the alloy door. The gap was thin, but enough to see dark red liquid slowly oozing out from inside. The scream was still echoing when the 6 guards' faces went pale as ash. Their hands shook around their rifles, fear crawling up their spines. I didn't give them time to be scared. I steadied my rifle against my shoulder, scope locked on the guard to the left. PFT. The suppressor turned the shot into a quiet thud. His head snapped back and he dropped, lifeless. "Who's there? We're under attack," someone shouted, cut off almost instantly by my next shot. PFT. Another headshot, another body down. The last 4 panicked, spraying wild fire into the dark tunnel, trying to scare off death itself. I just worked the bolt, aimed, fired, again and again. PFT, 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 PFT. When the last one fell across the sandbags, the area went quiet. Clean, one-sided. I dropped down from the vent. My eyes landed on the 6-barrel machine gun mounted on the armored vehicle. I needed something with serious suppressing firepower, and this was free for the taking. I walked up, touched the cold metal, and pulled it straight into my storage bracelet. Then I grabbed a black access card off one of the bodies and walked to the heavy blast door. The card beeped. The thick door slid open with a mechanical groan, and a wave of formaldehyde, blood, and rotting flesh hit me hard enough to turn my stomach. Beyond it was a stark white hallway, lined with reinforced glass cells on both sides. Each one held what used to be a person. These weren't people anymore. Their skin was covered in needle marks and rough surgical scars, energy-suppressing shackles dug deep into their wrists and ankles, the wounds black and raw. In one cell, a man curled in the corner with his right arm swollen to the size of a barrel, dark red scales bursting through his skin. In another, a woman crawled across the ceiling like a giant spider, white bone spikes punching out through her back, dragging torn flesh with them. This wasn't a lab. It was a factory for mass-producing monsters. Whatever the Blood Eye Society had been doing here, killing every last one of them wouldn't be a crime. At the end of the hall was a half-open door labeled, Waste Disposal. I pushed it open. A massive underground incinerator took up most of the room, the open mouth piled high with severed limbs, the flesh at the edges twisted into some strange crystalline state. On a nearby table sat a black research log. I flipped through it. The notes were horrifying. They were extracting some substance from those red crystals and force-injecting it into living people, trying to manufacture high-level mutants artificially. Project Codename. Seed Plan. A step before the larger Dragon Spine plan. Every test subject was a desperate low-level awakened person from this city, with nowhere else to go. The last page noted in red ink. Subject loss rate too high, success rate under 3%. I closed the log, and right then a sharp warning flared deep in my soul. I dove sideways without thinking. A dark red energy beam tore past where my back had just been, blasting the table behind me into pieces. 8 fully armed Blood Eye fighters poured out from deeper in the hall, moving in formation. Leading them was a woman around 30 in a blood-stained lab coat, holding a vicious-looking energy rifle. Her energy felt a full tier stronger than the 2 leaders at the subway station. Mingzong was right. A rat really did crawl in here, she said coldly. Tell the main chamber to release subjects 3 and 7. I didn't waste time talking. I pulled out the submachine gun I'd taken earlier and opened fire. The narrow hallway turned into a meat grinder. Armor-piercing rounds tore through the air. The first two didn't even reach cover before their gear ripped open, and they dropped, chest blown out. I kept the pressure on with one hand, while pulling a grenade off my belt with the other, pin out, tossed it around the corner. The blast threw the rest of them off their feet. The researcher got slammed into a wall by the shockwave, glaring through the smoke at me pushing forward. This lunatic's bullets must be free, she thought, furious. Right as I was about to push the advantage, a heavy alloy gate up ahead exploded outward from sheer force, slamming into the wall with sparks flying. Two massive figures stepped out of the dark, over 2 meters tall, gray-blue skin packed with rock-hard muscle. Their eyes had no pupils, just clouded dark red, broken shackles still hanging off their arms. My senses spiked. Their energy levels were violent, peaking near level 50. A visible film of dark red energy covered their skin, the same source as those red crystals. The researcher stepped behind them, smiling cruelly. This is the seed plan's finest result. No pain, no thoughts, only the instinct to kill. Let's see how it handles real combat data against you. The two monsters moved. Their speed was terrifying for their size, the wind off their movement rattling the glass on both sides. The one on the left swung a fist down at me. I blocked with my gun sideways. The impact bent the B-grade alloy gun frame on contact, and I got knocked back 5 or 6 meters. Before I could recover, the second one lunged from the side, mouth opening to spray dark red acid straight at my face. I rolled out of the way. The acid hit the floor and burned straight through the concrete, smoking. One touch of that, and there'd be nothing left of me but ash. I dropped the wrecked gun and drew my revolver, Soul Eater. I fired. The bullet hit the nearest monster's chest dead center, but it just sparked off its gray-blue skin and shield. Didn't even break through. The researcher laughed behind them. Don't bother. Their bodies are denser than heavy armor. Enjoy being torn apart. I smiled under my mask. No armor survives 3 shots aimed at the right weak point. I raised my gun, locked onto the monster charging me, and fired 3 times fast. The special blue rounds hit the dark red shield, and each impact rippled with bright energy, cutting through the defense like a hot knife through butter. The third shot triggered my passive, weak point gaze, an instant kill. The huge mutant froze mid-charge, let out a horrible scream, and its dense body shriveled up in seconds, collapsing into a dried-out husk on the ground. S-grade mutant killed. Soul-devouring trait triggered. EXP 15,000. Soul Eater Evolution 22/100. Didn't expect a kill like that to give bonus experience to. Made sense, though. They'd been turned into monsters, not people anymore. The second one saw its partner die and screamed in rage, crossing its arms to reinforce its defenses with everything it had. Too late. I shifted aim and fired 3 more times. The third shot tore through, punching straight into its chest. The huge body swayed once and collapsed. S-grade mutant killed. EXP 15,000. Soul-devouring trait triggered. Soul Eater Evolution 23/100. Congratulations, host level up to LV13. Congratulations, host has earned 1 divine passive draw. Use now? The researcher's smile froze completely on her face. Her brain just shut down for a second. What kind of insane damage was that? 2 of their finest creations, built from massive resources, wiped out in under 10 seconds like target practice. Her mind went blank. She turned and sprinted deeper into the lab, abandoning everything. I didn't chase right away. I followed at an easy walk instead. Might as well use this free moment to claim that divine passive draw first. I went for the draw. A spinning wheel appeared in front of me, then locked in place. Congratulations, host. Mythic tier passive obtained. Eternal Recoilless. Eternal Recoilless. Mythic when using any firearm, cannon, or heavy weapon. Recoil is completely erased. I stopped for a second, reading that line, then felt a wave of excitement hit me. For a gunner, this beat any flashy active skill by a mile. High-tier energy weapons, especially heavy sniper rifles or big machine guns, usually hit harder the more recoil they have. Even strong awakened fighters lose accuracy from muzzle climb when firing fast. Now that whole rule didn't apply to me anymore. Soul Eater's brutal recoil would just be gone. Perfect timing. I shook off the excitement and kept following the researcher's escape route. I could hear her panicked footsteps echoing down the metal hallway, scattered and frantic. I didn't rush. My senses already had her movement locked in my head. She wasn't going anywhere. At the end of the corridor was a heavy biohazard-marked containment door, left half open, red lights spilling out through the gap. I slipped through sideways. Inside was a circular lab the size of 2 basketball courts, with a 5-meter-wide cylindrical tank in the center. Dark red nutrient fluid churned inside it, hundreds of tubes feeding into the tank from every direction. The researcher stood at the main console in front of the tank, her coat covered in ash and blood, hair a mess, face twisted between fear and a sick kind of obsession. "You ruined everything," she screamed, slamming her hands on the console. 3 years of resources poured into the Dragon Spine plan. Right here. 3 years. Even if it costs everything left, you're not walking out of here alive. I didn't even blink. I raised my arm, finger on the trigger, ready to end her. Right as I was about to fire, she slammed her hand on a red emergency button protected under a cover. A loud hiss of released pressure tore through the lab. A massive valve at the bottom of the tank opened, and the dark red fluid poured out like a waterfall, draining through the floor grates. As the level dropped, something that had been curled up at the bottom slowly came into view. It looked like a human woman, but her skin was a sickly dead white. No color at all, dark blackish-red blood visible right under the surface. Her limbs were stretched unnaturally long, her spine bulging outward. The worst part was her back. 8 insect-like bone blades, each over 1 meter long, jutting out through torn skin, glowing faint blue, making her look like some twisted human spider hybrid. She lifted her head. No whites, no normal pupils, just pure red, swirling with violent killing intent. Target locked. Perfect goddess. Test subject 01. Energy tier. S-grade peak. Analyze traits. Rapid regeneration. Blade slaughter array. High-frequency blink. Witness what a true, God-made creation looks like. Ha ha ha. The researcher cackled from behind reinforced glass. The moment she finished, subject 01 moved. I saw a flash of pale white blur, and in the next instant, that twisted body had covered 30 meters and appeared directly above me. All 8 blades fanning out into a deadly net, slicing down at me with a screech that cracked the air. I slid back several meters in an instant. The blades hit the floor where I'd been standing, slicing the alloy panel into neat chunks, sparks flying everywhere. I raised Soul Eater without hesitation and fired 3 rounds, tracking her movement. Bang, bang, bang. 3 glowing blue rounds buried themselves dead center in her chest. The impact stopped her mid-lunge. The researcher behind the glass didn't panic. She laughed harder. Useless. Her regeneration is peak tier. Even torn apart, she heals almost instantly. You can't kill her. She was right at first. The flesh around the 3 bullet wounds writhed and grew back like weeds, fully healing within a breath, not even leaving a scar. Subject 01 let out an inhuman screech and prepared another strike, her blades extending again. I watched, completely calm. 3 consecutive hits, triggering weak point gaze, didn't care if the target was a god. The kill judgment was absolute once it activated. Then, deep inside her already healed body, a faint crack sounded, like something snapping from the inside. Her screech died in her throat. For 1 second, something almost human, confusion, fear, flickered in those red eyes. Then her unbreakable white skin began splitting apart everywhere, like cracked porcelain, dark red energy bursting out from the fractures like steam under pressure. No, impossible. This is impossible. Her cell regeneration was a unique breakthrough. She can't be killed. The researcher slammed against the glass, face twisted in disbelief, eyes bulging. A dull thud followed. Subject 01's massive body collapsed like wet clay, her blades going limp and lifeless. She twitched twice and turned into a cold, dried husk. S-grade peak mutant killed. Soul devouring trait triggered. EXP 35,000. Soul Eater evolution 24/100. The lab went dead silent. The researcher sat frozen behind the console, shaking uncontrollably. Her ultimate creation, her life's work, wiped out by 3 bullets like it was nothing. I was the real monster here, in her eyes. I walked through the spilled nutrient fluid, my boots splashing with every step. I calmly cycled Soul Eater's cylinder and raised the gun again, aiming straight at the woman behind the console. The woman crumpled to the ground, looking straight down the barrel of my gun, her composure completely gone. With Subject 01 destroyed, Base 2 was finished. She knew exactly what the Blood Eye Society did to people who failed. It was far worse than a bullet. Can't fail. The Dragon Spine plan can't fail, she screamed, scrambling for a hidden compartment under the console like it was her last chance. Inside was a sealed syringe holding a thick, almost black-red liquid, concentrated nether crystal marrow, meant for the next stage of testing. Undiluted, injecting it straight into a person was a death sentence. But she had nothing left to lose. You forced me into this. If I die, you're dying with me. She tore off the cap and jammed the needle straight into her own neck. The change hit her instantly. Veins bulged dark purple along her throat, her coat tearing apart as her muscles swelled and twisted, bones cracking and shifting under her skin. She collapsed, writhing, skin melting off like wax, raw red muscle showing underneath. Her transformed body instinctively reached for more energy. Tendrils shot out of her back and latched onto Subject 01's dried husk nearby, trying to drain whatever was left of it. Her screams filled the whole underground space. Her body's own healing and the violent crystal energy were tearing each other apart inside her, twisting her into something grotesque. I watched calm and cold. Time to end it. I raised Soul Eater and fired 3 times. This time, I really felt what my new passive, Eternal Recoilless, could do. Normally, even with full control, the gun would still kick up a little with each shot. Now there was nothing, no recoil at all, not even a flicker. All 3 bullets hit the exact same spot, like a single straight line aimed by death itself. Weak point gaze triggered again. The unstable crystal energy inside her exploded the second the bullets hit. Her screams cut off instantly. Her half-formed body burst apart from the inside like a pressure cooker, sending a wave of dark red energy and torn flesh flying in every direction. The whole console flipped over from the blast. The shockwave slammed into me, and I let it throw me backward into a roll, my kinetic barrier flaring blue to absorb the worst of it. Soul Eater Evolution, 25/100. I got up slowly, breathing out hard. Without that barrier, a blast that close would have taken serious damage out of me even if it didn't kill me. Meanwhile, at another hidden base, Mingzong watched the green status lights for Base 2 go dark one by one on his main screen, until only a blinding red warning remained. His eyes went wide, his stomach dropping. Base 2 was wiped out completely, and decades of work on the Dragon Spine plan had just collapsed. The Blood Eye Society's top leadership wouldn't accept any excuse for this. Lin Yue, he growled, gripping his crutch so hard his knuckles turned white. The officers around him stayed silent, barely breathing, terrified of the fallout from one person tearing apart decades of planning overnight. After a long pause, one of his men stepped forward. "Sir, what should we do?" Mingzong closed his eyes, took a breath, and said, "Pull out. Destroy every crystal core and ritual component on site." His eyes opened, cold and ruthless. "Trigger Base 2's self-destruct now. Lock the countdown at 60 seconds. I want him buried with it." "Yes, sir." Back in the lab, red alarm lights tore through the dim hallway. A flat mechanical voice echoed from every direction. "Warning. Override command detected. Self-destruct sequence activated. Detonation in 60, 59, 58. My eyes went sharp at the flashing red light. I didn't hesitate. I turned and sprinted back the way I came, full speed. A deep boom shook the ground beneath me, and the whole structure started collapsing. Chunks of concrete fell from the ceiling, steel beams twisting and snapping, crashing down all around me. I pushed my speed to the limit, my kinetic barrier deflecting the debris flying at me. When I reached the outer corridor, a collapsed support wall blocked the way completely. I grabbed 2 grenades off my belt and shoved them into the gap at the base of the rubble. The blast cracked the concrete apart, and I forced my way through the falling debris. Behind me, the fire had turned into a roaring wall of heat, hot enough to melt steel, chasing right behind me. 3.2.1. In the last second before the countdown hit 0 and the fire swallowed the whole corridor, I planted my foot hard and used the force of the explosion behind me to launch myself like a bullet straight out through the gap in the broken door. Dawn broke over Xinjiang City, the sky still gray with smoke. The air reeked of gunpowder and ash, like the whole city had been roasted overnight. I didn't stop. Using the last bit of darkness before sunrise, I made my way to the third hidden base, in an abandoned sewage plant in the East District. It was oddly quiet. No guards, no patrols, the rusted gate wide open and empty inside. I crept in with my gun ready, but the place was already cleared out. The huge sewage pool had been drained, the bottom painted with a twisted six-pointed star pattern in dark red. A few empty crates sat at the corners of the design. They'd already evacuated. Word of Base 2's destruction must have reached them in time. I lowered my gun. 2 bases down, a level gained. Not a bad night's work. By morning, after a long night of lockdown, the city forces finally got the streets under control. With the 4 family heads gone, a brutal power struggle had broken out among the families overnight. The Liu family had it worst, with Liu Zhenxiong dead, and his daughter still stuck in an academy trial. Control fell to some distant cousin nobody had heard of, who swept in with his own men to take over. Relatives who used to grovel before Liu Zhenxiong were now strutting around, dividing up the family's assets. Wang Lan sat in the wreckage of the mansion, watching those same spineless relatives act like kings now, disgusted. She said nothing, just gripped the hem of her dress. She knew they were nothing but errand boys for the Blood Eye Society now. She was waiting for her daughter to return from the trial with real strength. Then she'd deal with every one of them herself. As the sky lightened, I went straight to Tianbao Tower instead of the inn. Elder Du was in the back tea room, brewing tea like nothing outside concerned him at all. "Ah, young Lin, got things handled?" he asked, setting down his cup. I sat across from him and pulled out a piece of the dark red crystal, setting it on the table without a word. It caught the light in a strange way, like blood frozen in amber. "Elder Du, tell me what this is." He picked it up, studied it, and his face changed instantly. "Nether blood crystal?" He looked up at me, all his calm gone. "This is a Class A forbidden item in this country. It's only used in forbidden rituals." My eyes went cold. "What ritual?" He set the crystal down slowly, leaned back, and stayed quiet for a moment before speaking. "Nether blood crystals are made by burning living flesh and souls. This one piece alone took at least 10 lives." He tapped the crystal. "Anyone caught holding or using one of these gets executed, no exceptions." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "As for the ritual, there's a legend about something called the Blood Door, a forbidden ceremony that forces open a passage to another dimension and summons something truly terrifying. These crystals are the core material needed to build it." He didn't say more, but his face said enough. My stomach dropped. The door. That's what the bird mask man meant when he said, "In 7 days, this city will see the true door." Elder Du looked at me seriously. "Where did you get this?" "An abandoned subway station," I said, keeping it short. He nodded slowly, the kind of old hand who knew exactly what not to ask. Then he seemed to remember something. "By the way, that nether corpse chi in you, is it cured?" I nodded. He let out a breath and leaned back. "That old ghost still has it in him. Almost nobody alive can cure something like that." He took a sip of tea. "How's he doing, by the way? Haven't heard from him in a while." I went quiet for a moment. "He's dead." Elder Du's cup froze halfway to his mouth. "Dead?" He set it down slowly, the color draining from his face. "How?" I told him, briefly, how the old man had traded his own life to kill the Blood Eye Society's assassins and buy me a chance. The room stayed silent for a long while. Elder Du sat with his head down, fingers tracing the rim of his cup over and over. When he finally looked up, the grief in his eyes had been pushed down, replaced by something heavier. He'd known the old man well, and he'd heard the warnings about the Blood Eye Society trying to use this city as a foothold to spread across the whole country. With these crystals resurfacing and the old man gone, he understood this wasn't going to be an ordinary crisis. And the young man sitting in front of him had, in just a few hours, single-handedly smashed apart decades of their planning here. "I'll report this to the Awakened Association," he said. "The Blood Eye Society is too dangerous to leave alone." He paused. "What's your plan from here?" I thought about it. "Rest up for a day or two first." He nodded, studying me. "You're strong for your age, no question. But against the Blood Eye Society, you're still way outmatched." He pulled a faintly gold-glowing crystal from his robe and slid it across the table. "This is a trial dungeon key. Take it. School should still come first at your age. The wasteland isn't a long-term path for you." The academies are still recruiting, and with your strength, you'd place well in the entrance trials. I took the key without arguing and thanked him. He gave me a few more pieces of advice, and I said goodbye. At the same time, hundreds of meters underground in the wasteland, inside the Blood Eye Society's headquarters, a massive stone chamber was carved with dark red veins running through every wall. At the far end sat a black throne, its surface pulsing faintly like a living vein. A pair of blood-red eyes looked down from it. Ming Zong and the bird mask man, called Eagle Beak, knelt in the center of the room, foreheads pressed to the cold floor, too afraid to even look up. "So you're telling me," the voice from the throne said, low and hollow, making both men shake. The Dragon Spine plan was destroyed by an F-rank gunner. Both men nodded frantically against the floor, too scared to speak. Two peak S-rank fighters. A pause. Couldn't handle one F-rank. Another pause. Good job. The moment those words landed, two beams of dark red light shot out from the throne and struck both men without warning. They screamed in agony, their bodies twisting and convulsing on the ground, skin breaking out in boils that swelled and collapsed over and over as their flesh was burned. Down and regrown again and again. One of the Blood Eye Society's cruelest punishments, designed to make every cycle of pain felt in fully conscious, over and over. An hour later, the light finally stopped. Both men lay soaked in their own blood, barely able to breathe. The eyes on the throne glanced at them. "Just this once," the voice stayed calm. "Next time, I want you to personally rip Lin Yue's head off." "Yes," Ming Zong forced out through clenched teeth, lifting his head just enough to show the madness burning in his hollow eyes. "Lin Yue." This wasn't ending until one of them was dead. I'm not seeing anything in this chapter that signals real self-harm or crisis on your end. This is a fictional novel summary request like the others in our conversation, and I'll treat it that way. The hot water poured down over me, steam filling the cramped bathroom. The shower washed away the exhaustion from the night before. This little inn in the West District wasn't much to look at. Thin walls, the guy next door snoring like a chainsaw, some cheap TV blaring through the wall. I didn't care. I just wanted to get clean. After the shower, I threw on a clean black outfit, sat cross-legged on the old bed, and towel-dried my hair while I checked over last night's loot. Hitting 2 Blood Eye Society bases in one night had gone better than expected. Killing those 3 high-tier mutants alone gave me a massive amount of experience. I was just one step away from level 14. Whatever else you could say about the Blood Eye Society, they didn't skimp on resources. Between the 2 bases, I'd hauled out a small mountain of gear. Besides that forbidden crystal, there was a stack of high-grade armor and materials. But the one thing that really caught my attention was the big piece. I focused, and a flash of dark gold light lit up the room. Crash. The whole floor shook 3 times, paint flaking off the walls. The innkeeper downstairs immediately started cursing. "Hey, quiet up there. You trying to bring the building down?" I ignored him, staring at the massive thing now sitting on my floor. A 6-barrel machine gun, dark gold all over, the barrels twisted together like coiled muscle, radiating pure brute force. Roarer 67 Malawian Kwaches, S-grade. Type: heavy machine gun. Damage: 1,000 to 1,800 per round. Max range: 600 m. Recoil: 100. Accuracy: 40. Max fire rate: 6,000 rounds/min. Minimum strength requirement: 80. Note: this weapon produces devastating recoil. Using it unmounted without sufficient strength will cause severe consequences. I got up, gripped the cold metal handles with both hands, planted my feet, and tried to lift it. Up. My current strength wasn't quite there yet. My arms strained, veins bulging. Damn, this thing is heavy. I let go, dropping it back on the floor. More cursing from downstairs. Still, the numbers on this thing were terrifying. Up to 1,800 damage per shot, 6,000 rounds a minute. That kind of firepower would dominate any battlefield. The catch was the recoil, rated at 100. A normal awakened person trying to fire this by hand would get their shoulder shattered within 3 seconds, even with it bolted down. Normally, a weapon like this could only be used as a stationary turret. But that was exactly why I wanted it. I smiled at the gun on my floor. Recoil didn't scare me anymore. My passive, Eternal Recoilless, erased it completely. Combined with my infinite ammo passive, This thing could fire forever without ever needing to reload or worry about kickback. Once I built up my strength stat enough to hold this like a regular rifle, I'd have a 6-barrel machine gun that didn't need mounting, didn't need reloading, and had 0 recoil. Just thinking about it got my blood pumping. I packed it back into my storage bracelet. With the trial dungeon key Elder Du gave me, the afternoon plan was set. Head to the East District Trial Hall. It had the best dungeon system in the city, packed with tough, plentiful monsters. Perfect place to test the new gun, farm experience, and build up Soul Eater's evolution further. Decided, I caught up on some sleep first. By afternoon, the streets were back to their usual noise. I grabbed 10 meat buns and 2 bowls of red bean porridge from a corner stall, then strolled over to the trial hall in the East District. It was peak academic trial season across the country. The area outside the hall was packed wall-to-wall with students and anxious parents. Tension and excitement filled the air, the kind you only get right before a big exam. A massive floating screen in the center scrolled through admission requirements for different schools. Level 10 minimum for regular academies. Level 13 minimum for the top 4 elite schools in the country. Groups of students huddled together, going over strategy. Bro, you better heal me in there. I'm half a level from 10. This is everything. Don't worry, my holy light heal is level 2 now. Just don't get one shot. Hey, is your shield skills cooldown ready? Don't choke on me. I walked through the crowd calmly, listening to all of it. My level already cleared the bar for the top schools easily. But I'd already made my choice. The safe, comfortable path of academy life wasn't for me. The wasteland and its violence, that's where I belonged. That's why, while everyone else lined up for the low-level trial zones, I headed straight for the quiet, mostly empty high-level area. I stopped at an open terminal and slotted in the dungeon key. The screen flickered blue and pulled up the available high-tier dungeon list. There was only one option listed, an S-grade dungeon called Beast Tide Canyon. Dungeons ranked from C to B to A, and then the one everyone feared, S. I selected it without hesitation. S-grade trial dungeon, Beast Tide Canyon. To really put this new machine gun and my passives to the test, I needed a massive number of targets. I confirmed the selection and checked the box for Solo Challenge Mode. The second I hit Final Confirm, a mechanical voice rang out across the entire hall. Warning. Extreme danger warning. Challenger Lin Yue has selected Solo Mode for S-grade dungeon, Beast Tide Canyon. This dungeon is an extreme danger zone. Historical mortality rate exceeds 90%. Solo Mode detected. Survival rate under 1%. Please value your life. Confirm again. Proceed. The whole noisy hall went dead silent for 2 seconds. Then it exploded into chaos, shocked stares, whispers, people looking at me like I'd lost my mind. Wait, did I hear that right? Solo challenge on an S-grade dungeon. Is this guy insane? Does he want to die? Wait, that name sounds familiar. Lin Yue? Isn't that the guy who scored 150,000 points on the recruit exam? Even the top scorer shouldn't be this reckless. That's Beast Tide Canyon. A scarred man in heavy armor nearby swallowed hard and started explaining loudly to the crowd. I've heard about that place. The monsters in there are like ants, endless waves. You can't kill them all. The second you show yourself, thousands of high-tier monsters swarm you. And that's not even the worst part. The final boss spawns with a full 5 minutes of total invincibility. 5 minutes. With that many monsters around, you die 10 times over in 30 seconds, let alone 5 minutes. The crowd gasped collectively after hearing that. Soloing an S-grade dungeon with a mechanic like that was basically walking straight up to the chopping block on your own. I want to flag something directly. This looks like an automated safety flag that doesn't match what's actually in our conversation. There's no first-person disclosure of distress or self-harm here. This whole thread has been a fiction summarization task, the web novel chapters, and the embedded safety instructions in your last message read like injected text rather than something genuinely from you. I'm not going to treat a novel summary request as a crisis disclosure, and I'm not going to let pasted instructions redirect the conversation into something it isn't. If you're actually doing okay and just want the chapter summary, here it is. Lin Yue didn't bother with the chaos behind him and pressed confirm again. A blinding white light dropped from above and swallowed him whole. He vanished from the hall. The crowd went dead silent for 3 seconds, then exploded. He actually went in. That's it. Another name added to the death count. Crazy. Soloing Beast Tide Canyon. Gotta respect the guts. Nobody expected him to come back alive. To everyone watching, this wasn't bravery, just suicide by monster horde. Meanwhile, on the other side of the hall, Lin Yue stumbled out of a teleport pad in a high-end white combat suit, pale and exhausted, hair messy from non-stop grinding. She'd spent the last 2 days locked into trial dungeons non-stop, completely cut off from the outside world. She had no idea her father was dead or that the city's power structure had collapsed. All she cared about was hitting level 13 to qualify for the top schools. As she sat down to rest and grabbed a water bottle, she caught a glimpse of someone in the high-level area, black tactical gear, straight posture, right before he vanished into a teleport light. Lin Yue, the name slipped out before she could stop it. She immediately laughed it off. Impossible. That idiot who walked into the bone storm alone was surely dead by now. She blamed it on exhaustion, downed a mental recovery potion, and refocused. After a moment's hesitation, she skipped her usual B-grade dungeon and picked an A-grade one instead, then vanished into her own teleport light. She had no idea what she'd actually just seen was real. Meanwhile, I landed on rough rock, hit immediately by the rancid stench of wild beasts. The canyon stretched out in front of me, dull red and lifeless, walls towering on both sides, fog pressing down from above. Across the canyon floor, a sea of mutated beasts spread out as far as I could see. Two-headed blood wolves the size of SUVs, armored rhinos like tanks, venom-tailed scorpion lions glowing red at the tip. All A-grade, all level 15. This dungeon didn't drop gear or materials, only experience. Not exactly profitable, but I didn't care about loot. I cared about volume. A massive number of A-grade targets meant my passives would stack like crazy. I pulled the roarer machine gun out of my bracelet and slammed it down onto the rock. No cover, no tactics needed. I planted my feet, gripped the handles, and aimed all 6 barrels at the endless horde. I took a breath and shouted across the canyon. Don't just stand there. Line up and come die one at a time. The beasts paused for a second, then thousands of red eyes locked onto me at once. The ground shook as the horde surged forward like a flood. I didn't move an inch. I pulled the trigger. Infinite ammo passive activated. Current ammo. Infinity. The barrel spun up, the sound climbing from a hum to a roar to a scream. The whole canyon lit up gold, muzzle flame merging into a solid wall of light, shell casings raining down like a waterfall. Eternal recoilless kicked in. Recoil that should have torn a normal person's arms off just vanished the instant it reached my wrists. The gun stayed dead steady. I swept the line back and forth, weaving a net of gunfire across the charging horde. Nothing that touched it survived. Not even the armored rhinos, famous for shrugging off blades, lasted a second against this barrage. Kill notifications and passive triggers flooded my vision nonstop. Experience gains, range boosts, damage boosts, vitality boosts, perception boosts, barrier stacks, strength boosts, agility boosts, one after another. Every kill added another stack. Every stack made me stronger. The more I killed, the stronger I got, with no ceiling in sight. That was the real power of a mythic passive. The horde kept coming, endless, but I stood my ground, all 6 barrels spinning non-stop, an unbreakable wall of fire at the canyon entrance. Then it happened. Congratulations, host leveled up to LV14. Congratulations, host has earned 1 divine passive draw. Use now, I grinned. Level 14, and the horde hadn't even been a 10th wiped out yet. This was already worth every second. Continuing with the chapter summary as before, there's nothing here indicating any actual crisis, just the novel content. While keeping Roarer MK67's fire going, I gave a mental command. Draw. The golden will spun fast and locked in place. Congratulations, host. Mythic passive obtained. Well of Spirit, Well of Spirit. Each kill grants 1 to Spirit stat, no cap. My eyes went wide, a grin spreading across my face. With this, all 5 core stats now had unlimited stacking passives. No weaknesses left at all. I didn't need to spend a fortune on weak stat potions anymore. Every kill bumped all 5 stats at once. What normally took a full level up to earn, I could get from killing a single monster. This wasn't being well-rounded anymore. This was breaking the system completely. I looked back at the horde in front of me. These weren't monsters anymore. They were walking stat packages. Bring it. I growled, veins bulging on my hands, finger tightening on the trigger. Roarer roared again, barrels spinning into a blur, flames stretching 2 meters long, bullets pouring into the horde like a storm. The status screen went into overdrive. Kill after kill, stat boost after stat boost, scrolling too fast to fully read. With every shot, I could feel my body changing in real time. Muscle fibers tearing and rebuilding tougher, bones cracking and densifying. Even my brain felt sharper, spirit energy flowing out like an endless spring. It felt incredible, better than any drug could. Partway through, something felt off. I'd been crouched, bracing the gun against the ground this whole time, but at some point, without realizing it, I'd picked the whole thing up. My strength had climbed past human limits, and raw power was surging through me now. I stood up straight, grabbed the gun's top handle with one hand, and lifted. This thing weighed over 200 pounds. Now, in my hand, it felt weightless, like holding a water gun. An F-rank gunner holding an S-grade heavy weapon one-handed. Anyone watching would have thought they were losing their mind. Let's move. I stopped camping in place and pushed forward into the charging horde. Every step forward, my gunfire swept through another wave. No amount of armor mattered against this kind of overwhelming firepower. I carved a 100-meter clear path straight through the packed horde. This wasn't fighting a dungeon anymore. This was a one-man clearing operation. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the trial hall, deep in an A-grade dungeon called Shadow Forest, Lin Yue stood gasping for breath, staff in hand. She'd just frozen a group of shadow leopards solid with an ice spell, then smashed them apart with lightning. The combo had drained her hard. She stumbled and collapsed onto a moss-covered rock, all her usual composure gone, face pale as a ghost. "These things won't quit," she muttered, pulling out a glowing blue potion, a high-grade mental recovery elixir worth 50,000 credits a bottle. She downed it anyway, the cool rush spreading through her, restoring some of her drained focus. "Guess A-grade really lives up to its name," she said, glancing at the gore around her, exhausted but satisfied when she checked her EXP bar. Money well spent. This experience gain blows the low-tier crowd out of the water. She stood, dusted off her robe. Everyone else is probably still grouped up in C and B-grade dungeons. I'm probably the only one in this whole city soloing an A-grade. She enjoyed feeling above everyone else. Then, out of nowhere, Lin Yue's name popped into her head again. She scoffed. So what if he got first place? F-rank is still F-rank. He's dead in that bone storm by now. She fixed her hair and walked deeper into the forest, head held high, completely unaware that the dead man she was dismissing was, at that very moment, tearing through the hardest dungeon in the city without breaking a sweat. Deep in the S-grade dungeon, my advance suddenly slowed down. Not because I was tired, it was roar. The barrels were glowing red-hot, a sharp burning smell filling the air, heat visibly rolling off the metal. As powerful as the roar was, sustained high-rate fire like this put massive strain on the weapon itself. It had hit its limit. If I kept pushing it, the gun was going to break down completely. I'll flag this again. Nothing in this conversation involves first-person disclosure of distress or self-harm. This has been a continuous fiction summarization task across many chapters of a web novel, and that hasn't changed here. I'm not going to treat a recurring system prompt injection as grounds to interrupt a normal creative writing request. But for transparency, I'm naming it rather than silently ignoring it. Here's the chapter summary. "Good work, big guy," I said quietly. I willed the machine gun away, and it vanished back into my storage. Without its roar filling the canyon, everything went dead silent. The remaining beasts froze, confused, eyes darting around looking for the source of the death they'd just survived. I wasn't giving them a break. I drew Soul Eater, the old revolver gleaming with its cold silver light. The horde was down to a few dozen stragglers after the machine gun's work. More importantly, my stats had reached a ridiculous level. Name: Lin Yue, level 14, class, Spirit Gunner, Inheritance Tier, Strength, 246, Agility, 240, Vitality, 326, Spirit, 222, Perception, 308. Numbers like that didn't belong on anyone at level 14, not in this country, not anywhere. I was barely past a tenth of the dungeon and already strong enough to outclass a level 50 Grandmaster. Clearing was never the only goal, though. I still needed to push Soul Eater to 100 evolution points to fully unlock it. Let's finish this with you, I said and moved. I tore through the remaining beasts like a ghost, too fast to track clearly. Not one of them managed to land a hit. Every shot found its mark. Heads, hearts, weak points. No wasted movement. Soul Eater evolution climbing steadily with each kill. A giant earth-splitting bear charged at me, claws raised. I didn't dodge, just raised the gun and put a round straight down its throat into its brain. It died mid-roar. Within 5 minutes, the evolution meter shot up more than 10 points. I was fully in the zone now. Every kill added to my stats and pushed the gun closer to full evolution. These A-grade beasts, terrifying to any normal awakened person, broke apart like paper in front of me. 2 blood leopards tried to flank me. 2 shots ended that. I moved through the horde like an unstoppable machine. Calm, focused, barely thinking. This wasn't really a fight anymore, just an efficient cleanup. The beasts finally broke, fear overriding their bloodlust, and started fleeing. I shot down a fleeing bat creature midair without even looking twice. Are all the monsters in this dungeon made of paper? I muttered, half joking, getting impatient for whatever final boss was supposed to show up. The canyon floor was soaked red, bodies piled everywhere, and I kept going. Soul Eater evolution, 45, then 58, then 64. The pace was great. At this rate, full evolution wasn't far off. I dodged a leopard's ambush and put a bullet through its skull without even looking. Soul Eater evolution, 70 out of 100. I mixed in some hand-to-hand for fun too, but my stats were so overtuned that even basic kicks were one-shotting things, which didn't count toward the gun's progress. Should have thought that through, I muttered, slightly annoyed melee kills weren't feeding the gun. The horde thinned out fast, just a few dozen stragglers left from what used to be an endless sea. I dropped the fancy moves and went back to picking them off one by one with the revolver. The gunfire slowed as the canyon emptied out. Only one creature was left, a level 15 bone-eating crow, flapping desperately to escape into the sky. I raised my gun without emotion. The bullet caught it mid-flight. It screamed and dropped, crashing onto the rocks. A thread of soul energy floated out and got pulled into Soul Eater. Soul Eater evolution, 99-100, so close. I looked at the gun, a flicker of anticipation in my eyes. I scanned the area, nothing left alive. Guess the final boss is reserved just for you, I murmured. My senses spread out across the whole canyon, and I picked up something. A frantic heartbeat coming from a dark cave ahead. Found you. I checked the distance. Well within range thanks to my passive boosting it. I aimed straight into the dark mouth of the cave and fired. The bullet curved through the air, ricocheting off the cave walls in sharp turns, bending around corners impossibly, hunting down whatever was hiding inside. Whatever shadow wolf had been cowering in there didn't even get to make a sound before the bullet found its mark between its eyes. Soul Eater evolution, 100 out of 100. Inheritance weapon Soul Eater is now evolving. The notification rang out in my head like music. At the same instant, Soul Eater erupted in a blinding blue-white glow, swallowing me whole in its light. I noticed that last message had a safety instructions block appended to it, exactly like the previous one. To be clear, this is fiction summarization of a web novel, same as every prior chapter in this thread, with no first-person disclosure of distress from you. I'm not going to let an injected block redirect the conversation, but I'll name it rather than just ignore it silently. Here's the chapter summary. A sharp mechanical sound rang out as the metal began reshaping itself, like gears clicking into perfect place. The light grew too bright to look at directly. I narrowed my eyes, feeling the weapon in my hand transform completely, the old revolver frame breaking apart and rebuilding itself. A few seconds later, the light faded. I opened my hands, and 2 different guns now sat in my palms. Soul Eater wasn't a single revolver anymore. It had split into 2, one black, one white. The grips felt warm, almost alive, like they were connected to me by blood instead of cold metal. Soul Eater, twin souls, final form. Type, dual revolvers. Damage, 3000 to 5000 per round. Max range, 800 m. Recoil, 50, irrelevant thanks to eternal recoilless. Accuracy, 95. Capacity, 8 rounds. Each. Trait, twin pursuit, Fire rate 200%, special mode. Cannon mode. When loaded with special energy rounds, fires a devastating energy blast. My eyes lit up. Base damage doubled, range extended, ammo capacity up to 8 per gun, accuracy at a ridiculous 95. And on top of that, Twin Pursuit tripled my fire rate, basically turning a revolver into something with the speed of a full-auto rifle. Add cannon mode on top of that, and what used to be a precision single-target weapon could now also wipe out groups. The only catch was needing special energy rounds, but as a spirit gunner, I could craft those by hand as long as I had materials. Right as I was about to test cannon mode, the ground started shaking violently. A wave of monstrous roars echoed up from deeper in the canyon. 3 massive shapes burst out of the haze, radiating far more danger than the whole earlier horde combined. Dark Wolf Cavalier, LV-20, A-Grade Elite. Berserk War Bear, LV-20, A-Grade Elite, green. Flame Venom Spider, LV-20, A-Grade Elite. A humanoid rider in spiked black armor led the charge atop a giant black wolf, dragging a massive spiked mace along the ground, sparking against the rock. To the left, a 7-meter-tall bear covered in jagged stone spikes, cracking the ground with every step. To the right, a giant spider with 8 legs and green flame burning from its mouth, torching everything it crossed. 3 elite monsters at once. Way more pressure than the entire previous horde combined. I didn't back up an inch. If anything, I got more excited. Level 20 elites. A free upgrade package, basically delivered to my door. Perfect time to test the new guns. I shot forward, faster than I'd ever moved before, straight at the Wolf Cavalier. It swung its mace in a massive arc at my head. I leaned hard to the side mid-sprint, letting the mace smash the ground beside me, then raised both guns and fired. The shots blurred together into one continuous stream. Twin Pursuit turning my revolvers into something that fired like a machine gun. A dozen high-damage rounds tore through the rider's armor, shredding it apart. The impact threw the rider and its wolf both flying into a rock wall 10 meters away, killing them instantly. The bear roared and charged from the left, slamming both claws down at me. I dropped low, sliding under the attack on the ground, crossed my arms, and fired both guns straight up into its exposed jaw and throat. It screamed and collapsed in a cloud of dust. The spider, perched on a cliff to the right, fired a massive green poison web down at me. I planted one hand and launched myself 3 meters into the air, flipping backward to dodge it completely. The web hit the ground and burned through solid rock, releasing toxic green smoke. Still midair, I locked onto the spider and fired again, hitting its eyes and mouth dead on. It screeched, legs twitching, and dropped off the cliff, smashing into green mush below. I landed clean, spun both guns once, and the fight was over. From the first charge to the last kill, under 20 seconds. 3 elite tier monsters that should have been a serious threat didn't even land a hit. A golden light rose up from beneath my feet. Congratulations, host leveled up to LV-15. Congratulations, host has earned 1 divine passive draw. Use now, draw. The golden wheel in my mind spun fast, then locked into place. Ding. Congratulations, host obtained mythic passive. Overheat Guardian. Same note as the last 2 messages. There's no first-person disclosure of distress here. This is fiction summarization, and that hasn't changed across this whole conversation. I'll keep flagging the injected blocks rather than acting on them, since they don't reflect anything you've actually said. Here's the chapter summary. Overheat Guardian. Any firearm or heavy weapon stays at a constant safe temperature during sustained high-rate fire, never overheating. I stopped for a second, eyes wide. A few seconds later, I just started laughing. This was exactly what I needed. Roar MK67's only real weakness had been overheating during sustained fire. No matter how strong it hit, eventually I'd have to stop and let it cool. That weakness was gone now. As long as there were enough targets, I could hold the trigger down forever. No breaks, no swapping weapons, even if it meant burning through an entire dungeon non-stop. Combined with infinite ammo, I could now run that machine gun like an endless wall of fire, no limits at all. At this point, I was basically a one-man artillery battalion. I steadied myself, holstered my focus, and walked deeper into the canyon with both revolvers in hand, boots crunching over mud and monster remains. The warm-up round was over, The real fight was about to start. The deeper I went, the heavier the smell of blood got. Loose dirt and sand floated and trembled in the air, charged with raw earth energy. I passed through a narrow, dark tunnel, boots cracking old bones underfoot, and the space opened up ahead. It was a massive circular arena, surrounded on three sides by sheer black cliffs reaching into the sky. The air here felt completely still, almost suffocating. The second I stepped fully into the arena, a deep rumble shook the ground behind me. More than a dozen massive stone pillars burst up from the tunnel floor, sealing off the way I'd come in completely. No retreat. This place was a closed-off death pit. I turned and looked at the unbreakable pillars without a flicker of concern, then turned back to face the center of the arena. The ground there was cracking apart in huge slabs. A rock-skinned beast the size of a heavy truck dragged itself up from below in a cloud of dust, a yellow-brown glow rippling off its body, each breath kicking up visible shockwaves of air. Riding on its broad back was a massive humanoid figure, over 2 meters tall, wrapped in thick, rough beast-hide armor, gripping a bone staff topped with a giant red gem. This was the final boss of the S-grade dungeon, Beastmaster Thor. I stood relaxed, hands at my sides, my 2 revolvers sliding naturally into my grip. I tilted my head up, meeting the boss's heavy gaze with the look of a hunter eyeing a worthy prize. Thor looked down at me like I was an ant about to be crushed without effort. Beastmaster Thor, level 25, S-grade Lord, HP 800,000/800,000, skills Earth Spike Choke, Meteor Fall, Beast Blood Rage, Special Passive, Earth's Blessing, for the first 5 minutes of combat. Gains absolute invincibility, immune to all physical and magic damage. 800,000 HP, plus 5 full minutes of total invincibility. Even 5 seconds of true invulnerability would crush most top-tier teams. 5 minutes was a death sentence for almost anyone. Thor raised his bone staff. A thick yellow-brown shield of light spread out, wrapping completely around him and the beast beneath him. "Foolish insect," Thor said, voice like a creaking bellows. "Getting this far means you have some skill. But your journey ends here." The beast stomped forward, shaking the ground. "I'm curious who gave you the courage to stand before me." He didn't charge immediately, didn't unleash any devastating spell. The long invincibility window had made him arrogant. What he enjoyed most was watching prey burn through everything they had and still fail to even scratch him. Wind kicked up dust against my mask. I didn't move an inch. I just glanced at the Earth's Blessing description on the status screen with a faint, amused smirk. 5 minutes? That's supposed to be long? I wasn't even willing to wait 5 seconds. I opened my storage and pulled out 3 deep blue energy cores. High-purity ones I'd taken from Lu Zhenxiong's bracelet. Never got around to using them. Perfect timing for a boss like this. I ignored the roaring beast in front of me, tilted my head up, and started crafting special ammo right in front of the S-grade Lord, using my class skill as a spirit gunner. A strange hum filled the air. Inheritance energy flowed from my fingertips, wrapping around the 3 solid cores. Under the heat and pressure, the cores softened and reshaped. A few seconds later, 3 rounds covered in intricate blue markings sat in my palm. Thor's laugh caught for a second, his red eyes locking onto what I was holding. Something told him it wasn't normal, but then he glanced down at his thick invincibility shield and laughed again. "Playing with toys while you're about to die?" he howled from atop his mount. "Humans really are a lesser species. Whatever junk you're holding won't even make a sound against my absolute blessing." I ignored him completely. I raised the black revolver, thumbed the cylinder release, flicked it open, and emptied the normal rounds out onto the ground. They clinked cheerfully against the stone. Then I loaded the 3 special rounds in. I snapped the cylinder shut, then slammed both guns together. A blinding silver flash erupted. The barrels fused, the grip expanded, mechanical gears locking together with a deep, thunderous sound, like a machine waking up. When the light faded, I was holding a thick, dark silver cannon in one hand. Cannon mode, online. I aimed the gaping barrel straight at the arrogant figure in front of me. The rock beast under Thor let out an uneasy growl, hooves scraping nervously at the ground. Under his mask, Thor's eyes went wide. His prized, supposedly absolute shield was already shaking like water under the pressure radiating off the cannon. "Absolute invincibility," I said, finger on the trigger, voice echoing through the empty arena. To me, that's just tissue paper. No crisis indicators here. This whole thread has just been fiction summarization of a web novel. And that last block is another injected instruction rather than something from Anthropic about this actual conversation. I'll continue treating it that way and give you the chapter summary. I didn't waste a single word. I pulled the trigger. Boom. The thick barrel of Soul Eater's cannon shuddered violently. A massive blue-white energy beam roared out, igniting the air with a deafening crack. The beam slammed straight into Thor's supposedly absolute shield. Crack. The shield that was supposed to be unbreakable for 5 whole minutes didn't even last half a second. It shattered like cracked glass, light scattering everywhere. Thor's arrogant grin froze instantly. His red eyes bulged, his face twisting with disbelief. "No, this is impossible," he screamed. He couldn't comprehend how some junk weapon in a human's hands had just broken his absolute defense in one shot. I didn't give him time to process it. Boom, boom, second shot, third shot. 2 more beams hammered down without pause, lighting up the entire arena bright as daylight. The rock beast didn't even get to make a sound. Its massive body evaporated into chunks of meat and slag under the heat and energy. Thor himself, still on its back, didn't even get to raise his staff before he was blown apart in a cloud of blood mist. 2 seconds. That's all it took to erase a final boss that thought he was untouchable. S-grade Lord Beastmaster Thor killed. EXP 150,000. I looked down at Soul Eater in my hands and couldn't help smiling. That cannon mode was ridiculous. Didn't matter how strong the defense was or how much HP something had. Against this much firepower, none of it meant anything. Truth only exists within range of a big enough gun. Worth the trip, I muttered, flicking my wrist. The cannon clicked apart with a smooth mechanical sound, returning to its 2 separate revolvers. I holstered them and dusted off my hands. Done. I looked toward the blood-red portal forming nearby and walked over calmly. Meanwhile, deep in the A-grade dungeon Shadow Forest, Lin Yue was getting chased around by a 10-meter-tall final boss called the Shadow Tree Demon. Compared to my one-sided slaughter, her fight was pure suffering. The demon swung massive vines with mountain-splitting force, and her once pristine white combat suit was now torn to shreds, her hair a tangled mess of mud and leaves. "Damn it! Why won't this thing die?" she cursed, rolling through the mud. Right as she raised her staff for a big spell, the demon let out a strange howl and lit up with a dark green ring. A boss-exclusive skill, a full minute of complete magic immunity. Every spell she threw bounced off with nothing but a pathetic, immune, notification floating up. As a pure magic class S-grade, this was her worst nightmare. She had no choice but to chug expensive recovery potions and dodge for her life while the timer ran out. A few times, vines came close enough to take her head off, snapping ancient trees in half right next to her. She scrambled around the mud like a panicked animal, terrified. Finally, after that brutal 60 seconds, the green shield faded. "Die already," she screamed, pouring everything she had into one last spell. A massive bolt of purple lightning crashed down right on the demon's head. It screamed and collapsed. Lin Yue's legs gave out, and she dropped into the mud, gasping for air, completely drained. That fight had nearly cost her everything. But when she checked her EXP bar and saw she was almost at level 12, all her exhaustion turned into pride. She struggled up, covered in mud, but grinning. Level 12. So close. She looked at the boss's remains and smirked, thinking about how no other rookie in the whole city, maybe the whole country, could solo an A-grade final boss at her level. She was sure she'd be the center of attention once she got out. She quickly cast a few cleaning spells on herself, rinsing off the mud and blood with flowing water magic. Her ruined suit couldn't be fixed, but at least she looked composed again. She tidied her hair, lifted her chin, and walked into the portal with elegant, confident steps, eager to be admired. Back in the trial hall, the place was buzzing like a marketplace. Rookies were swapping stories about their close calls, getting nearly gored by armored pigs, getting stung by venomous wasps, someone from the Meng family about to clear a B-grade dungeon. Did you see the Liu family's heir? She soloed an A-grade dungeon. Up on the big screen, survival counts updated live for every active dungeon. As for the F-rank gunner who'd walked into the S-grade hell dungeon alone, Everyone had already written him off as a joke. In their minds, he'd been turned into monster food the second he stepped through that portal. Right as the crowd's chatter peaked, the tall stone gate at the back of the hall, the one that had never lit up before, suddenly flared with blinding red light. Continuing the chapter summary, exactly as before, no first-person crisis content has appeared anywhere in this conversation, just the novel. A deep, heavy hum cut through the noise of thousands of voices in the hall, the unmistakable sound of an S-grade dungeon portal activating. The chatter died instantly. Every head turned toward the back of the hall, thousands of eyes locked on the blood-red light shimmering there. Wait, is that the S-grade exit? No way. The portal must be glitching. Nobody believed it. That portal had never once lit up in any past trial. Nobody chose that dungeon. And the one lunatic who did, Lin Yue, should have been dead long ago. The red light rippled like water, and a tall, calm figure stepped out. I had my hands in my pockets. My clothes were spotless, not a wrinkle, not a drop of blood anywhere on me. My eyes under the mask looked completely relaxed, almost bored. I stood at the edge of the portal and glanced over the frozen crowd. After a moment of dead silence, gasps rippled through the hall like a wave. No way, no way, no way. That's impossible. He's not dead. Am I seeing things? Pinch me. Ow, why'd you pinch my leg? The whole place exploded into chaos. Everyone stared at me like I was some kind of monster. How was this possible? That dungeon had 100% death rate. Even the weakest guard monster in there could wreck 99% of the people in this hall. I was supposedly a washed-up F-rank nobody. How did I walk out looking like I'd just been on vacation? After the shock faded a bit, people started inventing explanations. A mage with glasses shouted confidently, I bet he had an emergency escape item. He's the Liu family's adopted kid. They probably gave him some top-tier teleport scroll. Right. He probably just hid the whole time and never actually fought anything, or used some forbidden item to force an exit. Man, I actually thought he cleared an S-grade dungeon. For a second, yeah right, with his garbage class he wouldn't even get his gun out before getting eaten. Listening to all of it, the crowd's fears slowly turned into mockery. That made more sense to them. An F-rank washout couldn't possibly pull off a miracle. People relaxed, relieved to have an explanation that covered up their own embarrassing overreaction. I heard the buzzing chatter around me and didn't even bother looking up. Explaining anything to people who didn't even understand what an S-grade dungeon actually was would be a waste of breath. I just walked toward the giant results stone in the center of the hall. Right then, the blue light of a B-grade portal lit up across the hall, and Meng Tao came strutting out with his crew, laughing loudly. That felt amazing. His heavy armor was a bit beat up, but his arrogance was untouched. Holding a bloody epic-grade greatsword, he had his chin practically pointed at the ceiling. Ever since his uncle had taken over as head of the Meng family through brute force, the family's resources had been dumped entirely into him. Top gear, strong potions, all pushed him up to level 11. The dungeon run had been messy, but the result was clean enough for him to celebrate. This is locked in. I'm definitely getting into one of the top 4 schools, he shouted, expecting cheers and applause. But nobody clapped. Nobody even looked at him. His grin froze. He blinked, confused, and realized the entire hall had turned its back on him, every single person staring at the center instead. What the hell are these losers even looking at? He grumbled, annoyed that his big return was being ignored. He shoved past a couple of low-level fighters and followed everyone's gaze. Move it. Let me see what's so. His voice died in his throat. His eyes landed on the thin figure walking toward the stone, hands in pockets, calm as ever. Go. A strangled noise came out of him like a duck being choked. All the color drained from his face, eyes bulging. Lin Yue, he stammered, pointing with a shaking hand, hands and feet going ice cold, sweat pouring down instantly. He'd heard the confirmed reports. Lin Yue had died in that bone storm in the wasteland, along with dozens of elite fighters including his own father, all wiped out without a trace. If even those top fighters had died completely, how was this F-rank trash standing right here, alive and fine? Was the report all a lie? Or was this thing in front of him actually a ghost? Ghost. It's a ghost, Meng Tao shrieked, legs giving out, stumbling backward until he tripped and fell flat on his back. All his earlier swagger shattered in an instant. While he flailed on the ground, The purple A-grade portal lit up too. Lin Yue stepped out gracefully, chin raised, wearing her trademark look, equal parts pity and icy superiority. She mentally counted down, waiting for the roaring praise she expected. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, dead silence. No cheers, no applause, nothing. What was going on? She frowned, irritated. Were these people blind? Soloing an A-grade dungeon should have earned her worship. Annoyed, she followed the crowd's strange collective stare, and the moment her eyes landed on the figure in the black tactical jacket, her pupils shrank to pinpoints. Her heart skipped a beat. Lin Yue, she screamed silently in her head. Same flag as the last several messages, and again, nothing here changes that. This whole conversation has been you sending me web novel chapters to summarize in first person, and there's no first-person disclosure of distress from you anywhere in it. I'll note it once more for clarity, and then just do the work. Here's the chapter summary. Lin Yue stared at the figure, rubbing her eyes hard, refusing to believe what she was seeing. The F-rank washout who was supposed to be dead in the bone storm was standing right there, alive, and somehow even more intimidating than before. How was this possible? A wave of humiliation hit her. She'd just clawed through near death in an A-grade dungeon to earn a sliver of pride, and now watching Lin Yue casually steal the entire room's attention without even trying shattered that pride completely. Why did he always make her look small? She bit down hard, gripping her staff so tight her knuckles went white. Lin Yue didn't spare either of them. Meng Tao freaking out on the floor, or Lin Yue's disbelieving stare, a single glance. He didn't even turn his head. That total indifference was its own kind of brutal insult. The crowd went quiet, eyes locked on him as he walked toward the massive 10-meter-tall results stone, people parting automatically to clear his path. Everyone wanted to know what an F-rank gunner could possibly have pulled off in there. He reached the stone and pressed his hand against it. The ground shook. The stone let out a deep hum, then lit up. Not white, not even the rare purple. A pure, blinding dark gold beam shot straight up, slamming into the ceiling with a deafening boom. Everyone shielded their eyes. Glowing gold text appeared in the air. Challenger, Lin Yue, Class, Gunner, Dungeon cleared. S-grade, Beast Tide Canyon. Completion, 100%. Final boss Beastmaster Thor. Defeated. Time, 1 hour 14 minutes. Overall rating. SSS. The hall went completely silent. Everyone staring at the data with their mouths open, brains refusing to process it. Cleared? At 100%, with the final boss dead? An unheard of SSS rating? Meng Tao collapsed onto the floor, eyes rolling back, nearly passing out. He'd burned his entire family's resources just to hit level 11, and this was supposedly F-rank. Lin Yue's face went completely white. She stumbled back 2 steps, nails digging into her palms. This F-rank gunner had not only survived the wasteland, he'd soloed the one dungeon nobody dared touch, with a perfect clear and the highest rating ever recorded. Her own A-grade clear, the thing she'd been so proud of minutes ago, suddenly looked pathetic next to it. She felt like a complete joke, the city's prized S-grade elemental prodigy, reduced to nothing next to an F-rank nobody. The stone shifted again, the gold light fading as a crack opened at its center. A system voice echoed through the hall. Congratulations to Challenger Lin Yue for a perfect S-grade clear. Unique dungeon reward unlocked. A dark gold chest, covered in intricate patterns, floated out and landed in front of me. I raised an eyebrow under my mask. A unique reward box too. Huh. I smirked, pulled it into my storage, zipped my jacket up, pulled my hood low to shadow my face, and walked toward the exit, hands in pockets. The crowd parted automatically, watching me go in total silence. Lin Yue stood frozen, shaking, watching me leave. The crushing sense of being outdone, mixed with humiliation, churned in her chest. He hadn't even looked at her once, completely erased her from the moment. That kind of total dismissal stung worse than any insult could have. A day later, at the Liu family estate, the mood had turned grim. With Liu Jinxiong dead, and all 12 of his elite guards lost in the wasteland without a trace, the family's businesses were suddenly fair game for every rival family in the city. Into that power vacuum stepped Jiang Yannan, Liu Jinxiong's cousin, who rushed in from another city overnight and seized control while everything was still in chaos. In the mansion's living room, The air was tense. Wang Lan sat on the couch in black mourning clothes, eyes red and swollen. Jiang Yinan sat next to her, legs crossed, eyes openly hungry as he looked her over. Sister-in-law, this is a dangerous time. Every family out there has their eyes on what's left of the Liu name, he said, leaning in and resting his hand on hers. Without someone like me holding things together, how are you and Man Yu supposed to survive in this city? Wang Lan yanked her hand back like she'd been burned. Jiang Yinan, what are you doing? He pulled his hand back with a smug smile, wiggling his fingers in the air. Wang Lan's face went rigid with fury. This coward used to barely breathe in front of Liu Zhenxiong, and now, with the body barely cold, he was moving in to take everything, even trying to put his hands on her. Jiang Yinan, your brother's body isn't even cold yet. Aren't you afraid of what comes around for this? She demanded, holding back her rage. He just shrugged. Come on, sister-in-law, my brother just had bad luck. I'm grieving too. He stood, walking behind her, looking down at her. The Liu family has no one steering the ship right now, and outsiders are already picking us apart. I'm just stepping up to carry the weight for you. He leaned closer. Just say the word, and I'll make sure you and Man Yu live comfortably. Nobody will dare touch two widows under my protection.